Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Fem Sasuke, Hinata and Fem Haku. Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Hiruzen was honestly startled at the topic the boy wanted to speak of. Why do you want to speak about Itachi, Naruto? That's what I wanna know. Sayumi added in a somewhat displeased tone. Naruto sighed and hung his head a bit. He knew that Itachi was a sore topic for Sayumi, so he would have been surprised if she wasn't a little displeased that he had brought him up. It has to do with what you told me about him this morning, as well as what he did. Something just wasn't sitting right with me. He then gave her an apologetic look. I'm sorry that I didn't bring it up to you first. With what happened, I didn't think it was the right time. Despite still being displeased, she gave him a nod of understanding. What did you want to know, Naruto? Hiruzen asked, feeling very curious about what the young man had to say. You're the Hokage, so you would know everything about what happened to Itachi and his clan, right? The young man started, being sure to emphasize the word everything. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at this question and grew even more intrigued. Yes. Then I will ask. Did Itachi really kill his clan for the reason he told Sayumi, or was there another reason? His question drew surprised reactions from the other occupants in the room, both in view and hidden. About time you brought that up. Kurama remarked. You know why I didn't? Naruto responded. What do you mean, Naruto? He told me himself that he only did it to test his limits. So what other reason could he have possibly had for wiping them out? The heiress asked, feeling very perplexed by the question. It was the way you spoke of him. He started, gaining a confused look from the girl. You described him as loving, caring and loyal. But before I go any further, let me confirm it with you, Hokage-sama. Naruto said, gaining the man's attention. Was Itachi a loyal shinobi? Hiruzen really wanted to lie and end this conversation here and now before it went any further, but he saw how serious Naruto was about this. He spared a glance at Sayumi, and he could see the pain the situation brought on her. With an inward nod to himself, he decided to be honest to at least give the girl some peace. Yes, Naruto. Itachi was one of my best and most trusted subordinates. I will be the first to vouch for him and his loyalty to myself and this village. Naruto responded with a nod before turning to Sayumi. So for him to be the person you described him to be, right up until the massacre where he did a complete 180 in personality, tells me that there is more to what happened than what we know. Why would someone so devoted to his family and village commit the ultimate betrayal of butchering his own clan for the selfish reason of wanting to test himself? As Naruto finished speaking, he could see that his words had gotten through to Sayumi and that she was seriously thinking over what happened. But he could also see the amount of pain that his question dug up for her. He placed a hand on her shoulder and gave it a small squeeze of comfort he felt when she flinched at the contact. I'm sorry for bringing up past memories. I just felt that you should get the truth about what happened to your family. He told her in soft tone. Sayumi looked at him with small droplets of tears at the corner of her eyes and nodded in understanding. Both turned to look at the Sandaime and they could see that he was in deep contemplation. His face slightly twitched and contorted as if he was having an inner dispute. You've made some good points there, Kit. The beast piped up before taking notice of the aged leader's seemingly inner conflict. And it seems that the old shadow knows what really happened. Think so? No so? Something like that doesn't just happen with the Hokage ignorant to what really went down. Kurama remarked. Sayumi had gone over Naruto's words and she couldn't find any holes in what he said. When she thought about the Itachi from the night of the massacre and then compared it to the Itachi that she grew up with, it was like night and day and she couldn't make sense out of any of it. She looked at her leader and she could see his inner conflict as well, some beads of sweat on his brow. It's as if he's nervous. Does he really know what happened? Hiruzen looked up at them and asked, even though he already knew the answer. Neither of you are leaving without an explanation, are you? No. This has to do with Sayumi's family. She's already helped me a ton within the little time I've gotten to know her. The very least I could do to repay her is to help her get the truth about what happened to her family. The boy answered with conviction. Hiruzen accepted this answer and then looked at Sayumi. He could see how confused and conflicted she was. He could see her looking at him, almost as if she were pleading for him to give her an answer. Knowing what he must do, he covertly signaled to his hidden operative that what he was about to hear is classified information. I had really hoped Itachi would have been the one to tell her the truth. Before I tell you, I need both of you give me your word that what I am about to disclose will not leave this office. Both preteens looked at each other, then back at Hiruzen and nodded. Hiruzen looked between the two before taking a breath and begun his explanation. He started by explaining the decline in the Uchiha's standing among the village. Even though they were one of the founding clans, they were never fully trusted. When Lord Second came into power, their standing declined even further. He told them that the Nidaime knew about the true nature behind the Uchiha's bloodline and how dangerous just one of them can be, much more an entire clan of them. So as a way to make peace with the clan and have the village benefit from them at the same time, he placed the Uchiha in charge of the military police force. The Uchiha were content with this, but what they did not know was that this was a way for the Nidaime to keep them isolated and under surveillance, so should the need arise, he'd be able to better deal with them if necessary. Fast forward and the QB attack happened. Many survivors claimed to have seen the Sharingan in the QB's eyes during its rampage, and it was due to these claims during the aftermath that suspicions arose against the clan, leaving many to believe that they were in fact behind the attack. The Uchihas vehemently denied all accusations against them, but because of the long-standing mistrust, the claim of the Sharingan in the bijuu's eyes, as well as the known fact that the Uchiha's bloodline is capable of controlling such beings, no one truly believed them. This only led to widening the gap between the clan and the village. Now came the part that he was dreading. The massacre was not used to test his limits, as he told Sayumi. It was in fact an unsanctioned mission that he carried out. 3 sets of eyes widened in shock upon hearing that news. What? Sayumi yelled in outrage. You mean to tell me that I lost my entire clan because you ordered it? She said while pointing a finger at the aged leader. Before she could say anything else, she felt something grip her hand. Looking around she saw that it was Naruto. Sayumi, let's hear his full explanation first before we start pointing fingers. Just like with me, he may have had a good reason to do what he did. Sayumi could see the concern Naruto's eyes held for her, so she grit her teeth and sat back down to fully hear the old man out. Thank you, Naruto. He then continued his explanation. He informed them that Sayumi's clan was planning a coup d'etat because they had become sick and tired of the treatment they were receiving from the village. Hiruzen had tried to negotiate with them to try find some way to resolve this peacefully, but he had failed. After that, he admitted to entertaining the idea of removing the clan, or more specifically, those who were seeking to revolt. While he was doing this, his former teammates turned advisors, went behind his back and ordered Itachi to remove the clan in its entirety. He then corrected Sayumi and told her that even though her brother did carry out a mission, it was not sanctioned by him, therefore making the mission null and void, and the actions of his advisors treacherous. If the mission was illegal, then why did Aniki agree to do it? Sayumi asked. The other occupants of the room didn't miss the way she addressed Itachi. That reason was you, Sayumi. Hiruzen answered, much to the girl's surprise. He then explained that they twisted Itachi's arm by telling him that with or without him, the massacre would take place. So Itachi agreed only under the condition that Sayumi be spared, stating that she was innocent and he wanted Izumoto to be able to live a full life. His wish was granted. After that, well, as they say, the rest is history. Hiruzen finished his explanation and sat back in his chair to allow them to properly interpret what they just learned. Naruto couldn't remove the look of disbelief from his face. They would really go as far as to wipe out an entire clan just to save their own skins. I understand the situation, but they didn't have to kill everyone. What about those that weren't a part of it? What about the kids? They didn't have to die. You would be surprised at how vile humans can be. They call us bijuu, monsters, when their actions are 100 times more heinous than anything we ever would do. The more he thought about it, the more the actions of the elders angered and disgusted him. I still can't belie his words died in his throat when he saw Sayumi. She was just sitting there, dead silent. Her eyes were blank and didn't betray anything she may have been feeling. But on the inside it was a different story. A storm of emotions was raging on inside her. Disbelief that her clan would actually do something like that, anger and hate for the bastards who forced her and Nikki to kill her family, grief over the loved ones that were taken from her. But the emotion that was the most prominent, however, was shame. Her brother sacrificed everything he had for her and left her with a chance to make a new life. And what does she do? Make it her life's ambition to kill him. Some little sister I am. Granted, she didn't know the full details of what happened until now, but that did little to make her feel better. Tears dripped from her eyes as the shame of her former ambition started to eat away at her. He should have just killed me too. I don't deserve what he did for me. She clenched her eyes shut and hung her head as more tears flowed freely down her face. So immersed in her distress, she flinched when Naruto wrapped his arms around her and pulled her into a hug. Without thinking, she wrapped her arms around him and buried her head in his chest. I can only imagine how much this has hurt you, and while I am unable to read minds, I can tell what you are feeling. You feel ashamed and unworthy. Ashamed of what you had wanted to do to him. He felt her arms tighten around him, and you feel unworthy of what he did for you because of that. She slowly nodded her head in his chest. I'll tell you something that I know, and it's something that you know as well. He broke the hug and planted his hand square on her shoulders before looking directly in her eyes. He loved you. He loved you enough to beg for your life to be spared and to give you a chance to start anew, despite how hard he was about to make it. He then put on his signature goofy grin. So buck up and don't let his sacrifice be in vain. I know that it'll be hard, but hey, that's what I'm here for, right? Besides, he's still alive, isn't he? I don't see a reason why we can't bring him back and clear his name." Sayumi wiped the tears from her eyes, a small smile now present on her face. She accepted Naruto's words and decided to honor her brother by not dwelling on what happened and instead decided to focus on moving forward despite how difficult it will be. "Thank you, Naruto." Naruto kept his grin and answered, "As I said, that's what I'm here for." Hiruzen felt a surge of pride at how Naruto handled that. He could almost see the man that he will grow up to be, loved by those close to him and respected by those against him. "You are going to go far, my boy. I just hope that I'll be around to see it." The hidden agent couldn't help but feel the same. "He really is your son, sensei. Nice work calming the vixen down, kid. Keep this up and I won't have to tease you," the beast thought. "I know that it was a lot to take in, but I assure that it's nothing but the truth," Hiruzen reaffirmed. "We know, old man, but why didn't you do something about your advisors? You yourself said that what they did was treacherous, so why are they still around?" the blonde asked with a little heat in his tone. "I had no physical proof to oust them for their treachery, only the word of her brother who is now an S-ranked missing nin. I tasked my Anbu with locating any proof which could be used against them, but they were unsuccessful. Well, my word does carry weight and it would cast a light of suspicion over them, but without any actual proof, it wouldn't take long for me to look incompetent at doing my job and would highly likely see me be removed from office." The old man sighed. "What's worse is that they used you two against me to get their way." "What?" both kids exclaimed. "Do you recall the ninja you weeded out earlier, Naruto-kun?" Hiruzen asked the young man. Naruto responded with a slow nod. "The one who owns those ninja runs a program that I had thought he had shut down under my orders, but it is obvious that it is still in operation. I won't go into any details but know that this program is not one you'd want to be a part of. They threatened to have both of you taken and put in this program unless I halted my investigations into them. I wasn't about to relent, but then they also threatened to have me removed from office and that way they could do whatever they wanted. I couldn't put it to chance on whether or not they were bluffing, so in the end I relented only on the condition that they leave both of you alone," he finished. "Who are these people?" Sayumi asked with an edge in her voice. Hiruzen closed his eyes and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Danzo Shimura, Himura Midokado and Kaharu Udatain." "Kurama, when can we start training?" Naruto asked. "What brought this on?" "Something tells me that exposing these assholes for what they've done and clearing Itachi's name isn't going to be easy. So if we're gonna do that, we'll need to be strong. So when can we start training?" "I like the fire kit, but one step at a time. First, if I am going to be training you both, I will need to project my consciousness out of this seal, but that can be easily done, provided you learn the technique," the beast answered. "What technique?" "All in time. But for now, it's best if you take your vixen and head out. She's gonna need some time to fully contemplate everything she just learned and she'll need you there for support." "How many T?" Naruto started but was cut off. "You might as well get used to it, kid. I have no intention referring to her as anything else," the beast answered cheekily. Grumbling about cheeky foxes, he conceded and told the old man that they'll be going now and that they won't tell anyone about this conversation. Dropping the barriers, the Hokage bid them goodbye before leaning back and sighing once again. "He's been doing that a lot lately. I understand why you didn't tell him of his connection to Minato-sensei, but don't you think you should have at least informed him of his connection to Jiraiya-sama?" a voice asked. "But how emotional today has been, with him learning of his secret and Sayumi-chan learning about the true fate of her clan, to add anything else would be too much for them in one day. Besides, she'll need Naruto for support and it won't do any good if he's in the same state as her." The hidden agent nodded in understanding. "Understood, Hokage-sama." With his hand still around her shoulder, Naruto led Sayumi back to the mansion in silence. There were the few passers-by who were curious about Sayumi's state and were also blaming Naruto for it. "Idiots." Naruto for his part did not pay this any mind and was only focused on getting the quiet black-haired girl home. Reaching home, he led her to the living room where he sat her down, never breaking the embrace. He waited for her to speak first. He did not have to wait long. "My clan was planning a coup because they felt wronged by the villagers' treatment towards them. I did not even realize that something was wrong, everyone seemed okay. I did not hear anyone complain of where our clan was placed, I just thought that this is where we always were. I did not know we were purposely isolated. I just thought everything was okay." She said, her voice cracking every now and then. "I was so blind." She suddenly screamed, "I should have seen it, I should have realized that something was wrong. Maybe I could have done something, maybe my brother wouldn't have done what he did. My family would still be here with me, alive and not killed because of some cowardly old bastards. Those bastards had everyone killed, not just those responsible for the coup." Everyone both guilty and innocent, and then they made my brother the sole villain for the act when they're the ones who ordered it. I'll make them pay." While she ranted and let her emotions out, Naruto just sat there and held her while slowly rubbing her back to provide whatever comfort he could. He knew that she needed to let them out now, or else they would just pile up until she couldn't bear them any longer. His breakdown on the mountain was proof of what that could do to a person. They were there for about an hour before her rants died down and she started to snore. "She fell asleep," he commented. He slowly and carefully scooped the girl up in a bridal carry and walked to her room. When he went inside, he gently set her down on the bed before removing her sandals and tucked her in. He was about to leave when he felt a grip on his jacket. Turning around, he saw that it was Sayumi. Her eyes were red and puffy, a sign of how drained she was. "Please. Stay. I don't want to be alone right now," she begged in a low, whispered tone. Hearing those words, there was no way he was leaving. He responded with a quiet okay. Before he took off his sandals as well as his jacket and got into the bed, Sayumi immediately latched onto him and buried her head in his chest. Naruto wrapped his arms around her and gently rubbed her back. It was a few more minutes before he felt her breath even out and she once again fell asleep. He reached down and brushed a few strands of hair out of the sleeping girl's face. "Good night, Wani-san." A few minutes later he followed her into a peaceful sleep. Naruto awoke a little too early the next morning. He looked over at his bedmate and found her cuddled up to him with a content expression on her face. He leaned back on his pillow and allowed his hand to trace the silky black locks of the heiress. It wasn't long before sleep once again claimed him. A few rays of light peeked through the curtains in the room and struck the ravenet in her eyes. This caused her to wake up with a yawn before she sat up in the bed and stretched out all the kinks. She felt better, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off her. She turned her head and saw Naruto, who was still sleeping, and smiled. She was glad that he was there, for only Kami knows what would have happened had he not been there. She leaned down and placed a chaste kiss on cheek as a thank you for what he did. She then got out of bed and went to the bathroom to clean up. Naruto awoke about half an hour later. He got up and stretched but noticed that something was off. There wasn't a weight on his chest. He realized that Sayumi wasn't there, but then a scent coming from the kitchen caught his attention. Oh, she must have gotten up already. Deciding that he had stayed in bed long enough, he got up and went to clean up for the day. After washing up, he got dressed in a black tank top and red shorts with the Uchiha emblem on the sides. He got them from the closet in his room, which he learned used to belong to Itachi. He walked into the kitchen to see Sayumi at the stove in a red, low-cut t-shirt and a white skirt. "Morning, Wani-san. You have got to teach me how to cook one of these days. It ain't fair that you're the only one who can cook like that," Naruto joked as he took a seat at the table. Sayumi smiled at the use of the term he now used for her. "I'll be sure to do that, my Itato. Breakfast will be ready in a few minutes." As they sat and ate breakfast, which consisted of rice, grilled fishes, miso soup and Japanese-styled omelets, Sayumi decided to give Naruto her gratitude. "Naruto, I want to thank you for what you did for me yesterday and last night. It really means a lot to me that you were there when I needed it." "Mama Wani-san, there's no need for that. I'm your Itato now. It's in my job description to be there for you," he said, not making a big deal out of it. Sayumi smiled at his words. "I guess so." Over breakfast she told him of her new goal to bring her brother back and clear his name. As well as her secondary goal of getting justice on the ones responsible for what happened. Those being the Sandaimi's advisors. Naruto agreed to help her with her goal in any way he could. She was grateful for this, but she also felt a little selfish. Here was the boy, now her surrogate brother, who shared his life with her, listened to her and comforted her when she needed it. And now he was willing to help her with her life's goals. She had to do something for him in return. "Is there anything you'd want help with?" she asked. "Huh? Well, you are willing to help me with my life goals. I thought it was only fair for me to help you do the same thing," she explained. "Oh. Well, I always wanted to be Hokage. It was my dream to finally be accepted by the village, and I figured that being Hokage was the easiest way to do that." He started, but after yesterday I realized something. I don't need an entire village to accept me. I have the old man Ichiraku, Nichin, and now I have you. All of you are precious to me, and it is for that reason why I want to become strong enough to protect you all," he declared. "Don't get me wrong, I still want to be Kage, but that's more along the lines of a bonus more than anything else." A pink hue adorned the girl's face once she heard that his main goal was to protect those he treasured the most. It made her feel special to know that she was one of these persons. "That's a really high goal you set for yourself, Itato. It's not gonna be easy to reach." "It wouldn't be me if it was easy," the boy joked. "I guess that's true," she responded with a small chuckle. "But now that I know your goal, you can count on me to help you with it." "Thanks, Wani-san." "Kurama," Naruto said out loud. Yeah, it's me. Are you and the vixen serious about training with me? Naruto already knew his answer, but he still relayed the question to Sayumi and got a firm nod in response. Good. But if we are going to do this, then we'll have to get a training ground to use. Finish your breakfast and get going to the Hokage Tower, the old shadow should have somewhere we can use. Alright. Came the collective response. They both finished their meals in record time and quickly did the dishes before getting ready to leave. They changed into copies of the clothes they wore the previous day and locked up before making their way to the Hokage Tower. It was early morning, so there were not a lot of people out at that time, but the few that were out made it clear that the presence of the duo did not please them. There were the usual glares and murmurs that were aimed at the boy, but with his keen hearing, he picked up one more than a few of those murmurs being aimed at Sayumi as well. Naruto knew that he was the reason for this change, so he decided to walk a little further away from the girl, but was immediately stopped when said girl grabbed his hand and pulled him back beside her. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked while giving him a small glare. "I saw how they were glaring at you and I heard what they were saying. I knew that it was because of me, so he paused for a few seconds before continuing, "I just didn't want you to go through the same crap that I do." He may no longer care what the villagers thought of him, but he still cared about what they may do to those he cared about. "I appreciate your concern, but I don't care what those bigots want to do." She then spoke loud enough for said bigots to hear. "If they want to glare, talk bad about me or call me names, then that is their problem, not mine. The only person whose opinion I care about is walking right beside me." She finished with a smile. The bigoted villagers silently sneered at her words, but kept their thoughts to themselves. Naruto felt his face heat up at her words. To play it off, he closed his eyes and rubbed the back of his head. "Thanks." "No problem, Ataudo," she replied. After that they continued their walk to the tower, not realizing that they were still holding hands, but a certain fox did. "You really struck gold with her, kid." They walked up to the office and was ushered inside by the secretary, who was more respectful this time around. When they entered, they found the old man doing some paperwork and was silently grumbling about the arduous task. Upon seeing his visitors, Hiruzen quickly dismissed his hidden Anbu before putting up a silencing barrier. "Good morning, kids. I hope that you two are doing better today." Looking mostly at Sayumi when he said that. "We're fine, old man, though we were wondering if you could help us out with something," Naruto asked. "How may I be of assistance?" Let's switch places so I can talk to him," Kurama suggested. "Okay, how do we do that?" "Just don't resist when you feel my presence overtake you." "Okay," he answered, feeling a little anxious. In the span of a few seconds, Naruto's eyes glazed over before his cerulean eyes were replaced with red eyes with black slits and his whisker marks darkened. "Now we can talk." "Kurama. Where is Naruto?" Hiruzen asked in surprise. "Don't worry, we just switched places so I could talk to you." Seeing the man nod, he continued. "Anyway, we came here to see if there were any training fields we could use. It needs to be secluded so we can have total privacy while I'm training them." Hiruzen rubbed his goatee in thought for a few moments. "There is one training ground that meets your requirements and hasn't been used in a long time, but before I tell you, I believe that I should at least have one of my Anbu operatives oversee the training, just in case something goes wrong. With all due respect, old shadow. With what I have in mind, there will be no need for supervision. Besides, I would rather have the fact that I am training them be kept between us," Kurama countered. Kurama saw the reluctance in the old man's eyes, so he decided to throw something in to sweeten the deal, so to speak. "How about this? In exchange for allowing us to use this training ground with no supervision, I give you the secret to taking down your greatest foe." The paperwork. Faster than Naruto could say ramen. "Done." The quick response startled Sayumi and had Kurama snickering. Hiruzen quickly pointed out where the training grounds were. After that, he then demanded his compensation. 2 words, old shadow. Kage Bunshin. Kurama wished he had a camera to capture the stupefied look on Hiruzen's face. He then receded to the seal and relinquished control over Naruto's body. Being back in the driver's seat, Naruto shook off the odd feeling of not being in control of his body. That felt weird. "Well, later, old man," Naruto called out as he took Sayumi's hand and left the office. So that's why Minato always boasted about the paperwork not being a problem. That blonde asshole knew the entire time and didn't tell me. He then shrugged. Well, no use complaining now. He quickly made 3 clones. When the smoke cleared, he found his clones looking at him with deadpan expressions. "Well, don't just stand there," he clapped his hands. "Get to work, chop chop." With his grumbling clones doing his task, he leaned back in his chair and pulled out a familiar green book, flipped through a few of the pages and started to giggle. "Oh, Yukio, you naughty girl." Naruto and Sayumi were walking along a path that was behind the Hokage monument and cut through a forest. A few more minutes of walking and they came to their destination. They couldn't help but stop and admire the place. The training field was a large open space with green luscious grass covering the entirety of it, and it was surrounded by a thick green forest. At the far end of the training field was a huge waterfall that emptied into an equally huge lake. All in all, the field was breathtaking. Yes, this will definitely work. The beast then narrowed his eyes in curiosity. But there's something way too familiar about it. They walked onto the training field and QB spoke to Naruto. Okay kid, for this to work you'll have to learn the Kage Bunshin technique. That's the same technique you mentioned to Gigi. What is it? It's a technique that creates a solid physical replica of yourself, in other words you're creating another you. Aside from giving you an extra ally in battle, whatever this clone learns and/or experiences is transferred back to you whenever it is dispelled. Cool. But how will that help you? How this helps me is that by channeling my chakra when the clone is being created, I can force part of my consciousness into it, essentially creating a clone of myself, albeit in a different body. The beast explained. Tell the vixen to go enjoy herself for the time being, until you get the technique down, shouldn't take too long. Oni-san. Naruto called, getting the girl's attention. The furball says to go and enjoy yourself until I learn the technique we'll let him out to teach us. What technique is that? She asked. Naruto then re-explained what Kurama told him. Oh, okay, good luck and call me when you're ready. She said before she walked off to look around. For the next 2 hours QB instructed Naruto on how to do the technique. It took him about an hour and a half to get it down, plus another half hour for Kurama to finally be able to take control of one. Now that's more like it. The cube-fied clone said while flexing the new body, not as good as my own body, but it will do for training. Go rest up for a bit, I'll call you when I'm ready. The beast said as he took off set up a few things. Naruto shrugged and went to find Sayumi. He found her sitting on the edge of the lake with her legs dipped in the water. Deciding to follow suit, he took off his sandals and sat beside her and dipped his feet into the water. What you been up to? He asked. Just walked around for a little. This place is huge, honestly if you put a few houses here you can call it mini clan compound. She answered. That big huh? Yeah. By the way, did you get that technique down yet? Yeah, the furball is taking a ride in his new body as we speak. If you ask me though, he's just goofing off and feeling giddy about being outside for a change. He answered while snickering. I heard that kid. Don't forget that it's just a clone of me that is on the outside, the actual me is still in here. The beast answered. Though he did feel through his connection that his clone found something rather interesting. A smirk came to the beast's face. So that's why I recognize this place. Clever shadow, old but clever nonetheless. As Naruto bashfully rubbed the back of his head at being caught, the sky above glowed for a few moments in what seemed to be dome-shaped barrier that covered the entire field before it slowly disappeared completely as if it was never there. What was that? They collectively asked. Landing in front of them was the cube-fied clone, but it looked different. He was now about 6 feet tall with tan skin. He had blood-red spiky hair atop his head that fell to his shoulders. He wore a black bandage around his forehead with a few bangs hanging over, and 2 locks of his hair were wrapped in bandages and framed his face. An angular and pronounced jawline devoid of baby fat, he had whisker marks similar to Naruto, but they were darker. His eyes were a piercing dark red with slits for pupils. On his left ear was the same earring that his kitsune form had. His clothes consisted of an open red trench coat, black Anbu-styled pants with black combat boots to finish his look. I just placed a silencing and illusionary barrier around the field to keep anyone who might pass by from hearing or seeing what's going on. He saw how they were looking at him and asked, what? How did you change? You looked exactly like me not too long ago. I used a hinge to change my appearance. I decided that if I'm gonna be out like this, might as well make this body my own. He answered. But enough of that, time to get to your training. Now to kick this training off, we'll start off by working on your chakra. Naruto, you're going to work on chakra control while Sayumi will work on building up her reserves. So kid, you're going to go and make as much clones as you can in one go, alright. Go do that now and I'll be with you in a sec. Naruto left to do just that. Now Vixen, as I said, we'll need to help you to build up your reserves. So I'll start you off the same way I did Naruto. He spent the next 20 minutes instructing her on how to do the Kage Bunshin. It didn't take her too long to get it down, but she could only make one at a time. Excellent. You got it a lot faster than Naruto did, but that's because your reserves are smaller, so it took less control for you to pull it off. Now you and your clone follow me. They went over to where Naruto was, and Sayumi's jaw fell open at the amount of clones that he made. There has to be at least 150 clones here. Kurama used a finger and gently closed Sayumi's mouth for her. See what I mean? His reserves are monstrous and harder to control, so it took him more time to pull it off. Now we officially begin your training. As always, we will start with the basics. Naruto, your clones are going to form 2 groups of 75. One group will be doing the leaf balancing exercise, while the other will be attempting the tree walking exercise. The purpose of this is so we can get you massive chakra reserves under control, so that you don't waste any chakra on any one technique. He then made 2 clones of his own. These 2 will instruct each group on what to do. The clones each took a group and left to another part of the field. The original then turned to look at Sayumi. Now, as I said before, what we need to work on with you is to build up your reserves to a suitable degree. He then made 1 more clone. He will be taking your clone to get that done. With that, both clones left. Now, while the clones are doing that, you 2 will focus on physically conditioning your bodies. I have a fighting style in mind for each of you, but I want to be sure about them. So I want both of you to spar for about 10 minutes so I can judge you and see if they would fit. Okay. Both preteens answered. They walked out a little onto the field and separated before getting into their fighting stances. Naruto had his hands folded into fists in front of him and his leg was bent slightly, ready to push off at a moment's notice. Sayumi on the other hand had her hand up in front of her face and her legs were slightly apart with one of her knees raised. Kurama raised an eyebrow as he noticed this. Seems she already has a grasp on the style. Now don't be sour when I topple you, Ataudo. Without missing a beat, don't bet on it, One-E-san. Kurama looked in between them and saw that they were ready. Hajime. Naruto launched himself at Sayumi like a rocket and got within striking range before he went for a punch to her face but was stopped by a straight kick to his chest that pushed him back. Not letting that deter him, he went for a big right to her face. Sayumi saw this coming and sidestepped his punch before sweeping his feet from under him. Naruto hit the ground with a grunt but had to quickly roll out of the way to avoid Sayumi trying to stomp his chest in. Naruto got up and charged at her, but she quickly countered and put him down again. This went on for the next 10 minutes, Naruto relentlessly charging at Sayumi and Sayumi countering and putting him down each time. Naruto charged at her one more time and swung at her face. Sayumi saw this and redirected his punch before slamming her knee into his stomach, knocking every ounce of air out of him and ending the spar for good. Naruto rolled around on the ground while clutching his stomach and gasping for air. Ow man, what the hell is your knee made of? It felt like a sledgehammer hit me. Sorry about that, Ataudo. I kinda get carried away whenever I fight. She apologized while holding her hand out to him. Naruto took her hand and with her help pulled himself up. It's fine, but I am so wiping the floor with you next time. We'll see about that, now won't we? She quickly quipped. Clap. 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 The 2 of them turned around to see Kurama walking up to them while clapping. Not bad at all. I've seen all I needed to. So how did we do? Naruto asked. Let me start with you, Naruto. While you do have good speed and strength, you are sorely lacking the skill to actually land a hit. You bulldoze your way to your opponent and take the hits as they come. Naruto felt a little downtrodden at the honest criticism. I'll give you points for your endurance however. It's not easy to take that many hits and keep getting up to go again. You have to remember though, that all it takes is one well-placed hit to stop you long enough for the opponent to finish you off, case in point, that last attack to your stomach. Naruto deflated some more upon hearing that. But hey, chin up. It's my job to point out your flaws as well as to fix them. Naruto brightened up at that last part. Now for the vixen. I noticed that you seem to already have a grasp on the style that I want to teach you. Kurama pointed out. Sayumi nodded, Ka-san was teaching me before well, you know. I see. Now while I can see that you at least know the basics, your body is still not conditioned to use it properly. Your attacks are still too weak and are still too slow to be effective against a stronger opponent. But like I said, I'll fix those problems. So what are the styles you picked out for us? Naruto asked. The style I have for you Naruto is called the Beast Fist. It is a style that relies on fast movements, flexibility and using the momentum from your quick movements to land strong attacks. Another aspect of this style is the incorporation of claws, so we'll be working on using your chakra to augment your fingernails for that aspect. It is similar to another style known as capoeira in terms of the irregular movements which are used to throw your opponent off. This is a style that I made myself so there is no chance for anyone else to know about it. Sounds like a useful style and add the fact that it is unknown which makes it even better. Not a lot of people will be ready to defend against it. Naruto commented. Indeed. Now for Muay Thai. The reason I chose this style for you is because it would fit well with your type of physique. Its focus is on speed and agility while incorporating an array of kicks, punches, elbows and shin attacks. We will be focusing more on the lower body attacks since it is clear from the spar that you favor using your lower body over your upper. It also helps that you already know the basics so the rest will be easy to teach you. He explained and got a nod from the girl. Now this is how we begin. Kurama said with a sinister chuckle that sent chills up both their spines. Kurama wanted to use the 3 years before their graduation wisely, so he started by using the first year to focus solely on building their taijutsu. So for the first 3 months, every day after the academy they would go to the field and start their training regimen, which started off with 200 laps around perimeter of the field, which amounted to a 12 kilometers run to build up their stamina. After that, they had a half hour to rest up before getting to work on conditioning their bodies. Sayumi's regimen consisted of squats, burpees, push-ups, deadlifts and lunges. Naruto on the other hand had to do all of those with the added exercise of climbing the waterfall to work out all of his muscles simultaneously. Kurama always had a clone supervising him in case he fell. After that it was kunai and shuriken practice to improve their accuracy. When evening came, Kurama would lecture them on various topics as they warmed down. Everything from history, politics, different ninja specializations to the different clans and what they specialized in. End of the first 3 months. I have to say that I am impressed with your progress. Your bodies have reached an acceptable level for me to start training you in your styles. Kurama then made 2 clones. Naruto, you will watch and repeat the katas that the clone on the right shows you. Sayumi, the same goes for you with the one on the left. I'll hang back and supervise and correct any flaws you have. The next 4 months were spent learning the katas and correcting any mistakes they may have made. Sayumi took to her style like a fish to water and was able to get it down in only 3 months. Naruto took a little longer to get his style down, since not only did he have to learn the katas which were hard as hell to master due to how irregular the movements were, but he also had to learn to augment his fingernails into claw and then incorporate those into the style as well. So he ended up taking the entire 4 months to fully get it down. The last 5 months of the year were used to refine their styles and gain some experience using them, so they sparred against Kurama, who did not hold back against them. End of first year. Well, the first year is done, and you two are proficient enough in your styles to give most shinobi a run for their money. Kurama praised. The two beamed at the praise. It showed on their bodies how much dedication they put into their training. Naruto, now 13 years old, was standing at 5'2", coming from being 4'8". He was wearing a white tank top and black training pants with black sandals. He now sported a lean body with clearly defined muscles from top to bottom. This physique also had the added effect of making his female classmates eye him with lust whenever he's in class. Sayumi on the other hand was now 5'3", just an inch taller than Naruto. She was wearing a white tank top with white chest bindings underneath for her now low B-cup bust, black spats that fit rather snugly with black sandals on her feet. She sported a moderately defined upper body, but the vast improvement lay with her lower body. Since her training regimen focused on this area, it left her with well-toned leg muscles, wider hips and round and well-shaped rump that tended to bounce whenever she walked. Kurama was right on the money about their taijutsu skills as well. Having sparred against a beast who had many millennia worth of experience under his belt, they were confident that they had a good chance against most shinobi in terms of physical prowess. Now with that said, I don't want you two to get beepy in your abilities. You may have sparred against me, but I employ different strengths and tactics than any other enemy you'll face in the future. So as a bit of a heads up, I want you two to study this. He said before tossing a small blue book to them. Naruto caught it, looked it over and then asked, "What's this?" "That, my dear pupil, is a bingo book. It contains information on most ninja from the different villages. Everything from their rank to what they specialize in. With this you'll at least have an idea of how your opponent fights in the chance you come across any of them." Kurama advised and got nods of understanding from both. "Now you can do that on your own time. Since we are done with the taijutsu portion, it is time to move on to the ninjutsu portion of the training." He took out 2 sheets of paper and handed it to his students. These are called chakra papers. What they do is that by channeling chakra into them, they will tell you what element you possess. Wind if it cuts, lightning if it wrinkles, water if it gets soggy, fire if it burns and earth if it turns to dust. Naruto channeled his chakra into the paper and it blew up into confetti. Seems someone has a strong wind affinity. He then looked at Sayumi, whose paper spilt into 2 with one half wrinkling and the other half burning to ash. "And you have dual affinities for lightning and fire. Impressive." After that he explained the first stage for each of the affinities to them. Naruto had to use only his wind chakra to split a leaf into 2. Sayumi had to use fire manipulation to burn a leaf until it was ash, and for lightning, she had to power a light bulb without blowing it up. With the help of their clones, both were able to get past these milestones within a month. 2 months later. It was almost nighttime in Konoha, and we can find 2 tired and sweaty preteens making their way home. Having expended nearly all their chakra in training today and being worked to the bone by Kurama, they couldn't wait to go home to get some shut-eye. They were still in their training clothes too. Naruto was wearing an orange tank top and black shorts with orange stripes at the side. Black sandals were on his feet with matching color wrist and ankle tape. Sayumi had her long hair in a high ponytail with strands at the side of her face. She was wearing a white tank top that showed off her toned midriff, and on her hands were black and red gloves that extended just past her wrists. She also had on black shorts with matching color sandals. Naruto stretched his hands up and yawned, "Yeah, I thought the first step was hard, but cutting a whole waterfall is crazy difficult. At least you already got the hang of one of yours already." Naruto then pouted while feeling a little jealous. Sayumi pinched the boy's cheek, "Now don't be like that, Itato. Besides, it isn't like you don't get a nice view every now and then," she mentioned and made the boy go red in the face. After completing the first stages, Kurama wasted no time in moving them on to the next stages. For Naruto, he had to cut a whole waterfall with just his wind manipulation. Anbu code named Ryu had to be called in to build a bridge right across the middle of the waterfall for Naruto stand on. Sayumi had to use fire manipulation to burn a tree down, and for Raiden, she had to focus on generating lightning throughout her body without overdoing it. The Kaden exercise was easy since it was just a bigger version of the first stage, so it only took her 2 weeks to compete. The Raiden exercise was tricky though. If she wasn't careful, she risked getting third-degree burns, blindness, nervous system damage, as well as a whole host of other side effects. There was one more effect, but it was more embarrassing than it was dangerous. Due to the lightning quickly evaporating the built-up sweat on her body, it caused a mini explosion of steam which shredded her clothes or straight up blew them off, leaving her body exposed. Not only did it leave Naruto red-faced, but it caused a certain part of his anatomy to wake up. Poor Kurama had the awkward and unfortunate task of explaining the birds and the bees to the boy. After that he then gave the blonde a certain little green book in case he needed a better reference. Now with the feelings that he had for the girl added to the now vivid image of her nude body in his mind, once again added to the explanation of how certain parts worked. It's safe to say that he had a hard time looking at her for a while. His face went red as his mind replayed that image for him. A drop of blood dripped from his nose that he quickly wiped away. "Will you stop bringing that up?" he said, only to have her drape her arm around his shoulder and press herself against him, making him get redder if that was possible. "So you don't like me? I thought I was beautiful," she said with crocodile tears in her eyes. "No, no, 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 you are beautiful, it's just." He stopped mid-sentence when he heard the sound of snickering. He saw that Sayumi had a hand over her mouth and her shoulders were moving up and down. "You're way too fun to tease, Itato," she said after she finally calmed down from laughing. "Thanks for the compliment though." Despite what happened, Sayumi wasn't entirely embarrassed by it. Sure, she was embarrassed that her Itato saw her nude body like that, but having gotten the talk when her mother was still alive, she knew why his body reacted that way. It was a little awkward at first, but in the end she didn't mind and would even playfully tease him just to embarrass him. Naruto turned away with a humph and wiped away another drop of blood from his nose. "Troublesome sister," he muttered under his breath. Across town a pineapple-haired boy was sleeping and suddenly gave out, "Achoo." He wiped his nose and looked around. "Troublesome," he muttered before going back to sleep. The raven and blonde-haired duo were now passing by a residential area. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly as he realized that something was off. Is it just me, or is it quieter than usual? He glanced at Sayumi, even though she held a calm disposition, he noticed how her eyes were scanning the area as well, she too had caught on that something was awry. Naruto glanced around and took notice that there were no lights in any of the surrounding homes. This place is never this dead at these times. "Keep your guard up, kid, this reeks of an ambush." No sooner had those words left Kurama's mouth, Naruto pushed Sayumi out of the way as two kunai dug deep into his right shoulder. "Kuzo?" Naruto cursed. "Naruto, are you okay?" Sayumi called. "Yeah, I'm fine." With a grunt he ripped the kunai from his shoulder and threw them to the ground, leaving a trail of blood running down his arm as the wounds hissed and began to close. Ignoring that, he called out, "Who's there?" Well. It seems our demon has gotten tougher," a voice said. 3 male shinobi stepped out of the shadows and into view. By the light green color of their flak jackets, they were Chunin. "And my, oh my, have you gotten more beautiful," one of them said with a lecherous smile as he waggled his eyebrows at Sayumi. Sayumi felt a shudder go down her spine, having gotten the idea of what that one was after. Naruto quickly stepped in front of Sayumi and sneered, "What's the big idea attacking us?" he queried, not liking the situation one bit. "Let's just say that we were paid to rid the village of you." The last one spoke up before his expression matched that of his lecherous comrades. "And part of our payment is standing behind you." 2 pairs of suddenly eyes widened in shock and horror as they realized what he meant before they narrowed in anger. Naruto's brows furrowed as his fingernails lengthened into claws and he growled at the disgusting Chunin. "Not even over my dead body. You got part of it right, kid. But enough chit-chat." The man looked in between his 2 cohorts and said, "Let's keep it quiet, boys, wouldn't want to draw too much attention." With that the trio of Chunin rushed the teens. I'll be referring to them as Chunin 1, 2 and 3 from now on. Chunin 1 and 2 went after Naruto, while Chunin 3 went after Sayumi, separating them. I have to say you're pretty good to be holding your own against me, and you're not even out of the academy yet. The man struck with an overhead punch which Sayumi blocked before she landed a bone-crunching kick to the man's sternum, sending him back and making him cough up blood. He spat some blood from his mouth and smiled, showing his now blood-stained teeth. Ooh, oh feisty. I like it when they fight back. Fuck you, asshole. Sayumi heatedly shot back. Oh, I intend to. The man answered without missing a beat. He then launched himself at the ravenet once more. Sayumi saw him coming and readied herself, but she couldn't help but think of her Itato. Please be okay, Naruto. Gotta say I'm kind of embarrassed that a runt not even out of the academy is giving me trouble. Chunin 1 said as he swung at the blonde but was quickly blocked and took a punch to the side of his face. I get what you mean. It's really making me feel self-conscious about my skills right now. Chunin 2 replied as he tried to attack the blonde from behind, but the blonde ducked and swept the man off his feet before landing an uppercut to his face and sent his body rolling. For the past 10 minutes they've been attacking Naruto non-stop using only taijutsu, but with his training, it was easy for him to keep up with them. What's the matter guys? I'm over here tight as hell and you still can't hit me. Are you really Chunin or did you buy those jackets? Naruto mocked. Chunin 2 wiped some blood from his mouth. You won't be saying that for long you piece of shit. He drew his light long blade from its sheath. Playtime is over, time to get serious. He then jumped high into the air and was now descending for a downward slash. Naruto watched as the Chunin descended and quickly dodged to the side as the man went for the slash before he sweep-kicked the man's feet while he was still in midair, causing him to spin and then smash head first into the ground, knocking him out. One down. The blonde thought before he turned to look at Chunin 1. Well, it seems that you're the only one left since 1E-san's not gonna be losing to your friend. So I'm giving you a chance to give up before this goes any further. So you think that you're tough shit just because you knocked out one of us? Newsflash you piece of crap, he was the weakest of us, so don't be thinking that you're all that. The man drew his tanto blade from his side. Now let's see how you do against a real shinobi. The man disappeared in a shunshin and reappeared behind Naruto, looking to lop the boy's head off. Naruto ducked the slash and spun on his heel to land a kick to the man's chest, knocking the man back. Not letting up, Naruto jumped and went for a hook kick aimed at the man's head, which the Chunin ducked. Keeping his momentum, he fell into a sweep kick that the man backstepped. Still keeping the momentum, Naruto pushed off the ground with speed that caught the Chunin off guard, leaving him open for Naruto to rake his claws across the man's face. The man dropped his blade and held his face in pain. Naruto milked this advantage and continued his assault on the Chunin with a combo of claw swipes, punches and kicks, before finishing at a palm strike to the chest, knocking the man back a few feet and putting him down. Naruto took a breath and looked at his downed opponent. Should have backed down. Sensing a chakra signature, Naruto turned around and looked up to see Chunin 2 once again attempting a downward slash. Does this guy not learn? He deadpanned. Naruto set himself up to counter as he did before. He watched as the blade got closer, and just as he was about to go for the counter, his vision blurred and limbs suddenly felt heavy. What? Unable to react in time, he took the slash clean across his torso. Grunting in pain, he managed to jump out of the man's reach, but felt sluggish as he did so. His vision blurred even more, and he was now finding it hard to keep himself standing. What the hell just happened to me? The Chunin smirked as he saw the Jinchuriki's condition. So it seems to be finally kicking in. About damn time. What the hell is he talking about? Naruto frantically thought as his wound slowly closed. Kid, you've been poisoned. I don't know what type exactly, but it's what's affecting you. It's pretty potent and is spreading as fast as I can flush it out. So until it's gone, you're on your own. Kurama informed him. Poison? His eyes widened before they narrowed in realization the kunai from earlier. Naruto snarled. The Chunin relaxed in his stance and started to laugh before he gave his smug answer. Oh, so you noticed. It seems that you do have a brain in there. He said, making Naruto growl at the insult. It's venom from the inland taipan. It's an extremely fatal and fast-spreading neurotoxin, and chances of you surviving are little to none. He got into his stance once more. But why leave it to chance? Oh, and to be fair, just know that my blade is coated in it and each cut makes it work faster. Kurama. Naruto nearly growled. I'm using as much chakra as I can, kid. Any more and I risk damaging your body. Try to avoid his attacks as best you can in the meantime. Easier said than done, furball. Which was right, with his blurred visor and constantly weakening body, he couldn't react in time to evade and counter as before. Then more minutes passed and Naruto fell to his knees with multiple cuts strewn across his body. His head was pounding from the killer headache that he had, and his stomach felt like it was going to burst open from the abdominal pain, but that was just the start. His breathing had become labored, his vision was so blurry that he could hardly make out what was in front of him, and his body was now completely unresponsive save for one arm. The Chunin walked up to the kneeling Jinchuriki with a condescending smirk on his face. "Now you're in your rightful place, demon." He lifted his leg up, "Under my boot." He kicked the boy in his face and sent his body tumbling and sailing through the air before he slammed into a nearby wall. Naruto's eyes widened as he coughed up more blood, but he didn't scream, not wanting to give his attacker the satisfaction to know that he's in pain. The man walked up to the blonde with his blade in hand. "You have no idea." He then plunged the blade right through the boy's torso and into the wall behind him. "How long I've wanted to do that." "Ai." Naruto screamed, unable to hold it in any longer. Music to my ears. Oh, and before I forget, this venom comes with a little bonus of amplifying any pain you feel tenfold. The man said with a deranged smile as he slowly twisted the blade, making the boy scream even more and nearly passing out. Chunin 2 heard a voice behind him say, "So you finally got him, huh?" Turning around, he saw Chunin 1 walking up to him while holding his bleeding side. His flak jacket looked like it was on the business end of a buzzsaw with bits of blood stained on it. He had a black eye as well as 4 bleeding claw marks across his face. "Man, you look like shit," Chunin 2 remarked while snickering. "Blame it on that little beast you got pinned there," Chunin 1 shot back. As blood flowed from his lips, "At least. The name of my style fits," Naruto weakly mused. "Kurama. Just hang in there, kid. I'm doing what I can to heal you, but this damn poison isn't making it easy. I can't risk flooding your body to push it out, for you're still not fully accustomed to my chakra yet, and that damned poison-coated sword is not helping," Kurama said in frustration as he pushed himself to do his task. Naruto lifted his barely responsive arm in an effort to help out his tenant. Just as his hand was about to touch the sword, Chunin 1 stabbed his tanto blade through it and pinned it to the wall. Now, what do you think you're doing?" Naruto could only grit his blood-stained teeth and give them an angry glare. "Now don't be like that, after all you're going to provide a great service. Chunin 1 started with your death, the final reminder of what happened 13 years ago will be erased, and the villagers will finally be at peace, knowing that the demon is finally put to rest. We'll be praised as heroes for doing the deed. And the heiress, well, she is just gonna be a nice bonus for our efforts," the man said as he slowly twisted the blade in the boy's hand. Seeing the boy grit his teeth in pain made the man smile wickedly before violently ripped the blade from the boy's hand. He watched in sadistically as blood gushed from the hand and how the boy was struggling to keep himself from screaming. "Now then, let's have a little fun." His sadistic smile never left as he slowly ran the blade across the blonde's chest. Naruto could only squeeze his eyes shut and grit his teeth through it. A few minutes earlier, Sayumi and Chunin 3 had been fighting for some time now, and it was clear that despite his rank, Sayumi was the better fighter. The man was now sporting several bruises all over his body, a broken nose, broken ribs, a broken arm, a black eye, as well as the aforementioned broken sternum. The one thing she could give the guy credit for, however, was his unwavering resilience. The guy just wouldn't stay down. Sayumi's chest heaved up and down as she caught her breath. "There's no win here for you, so why don't you just give up?" she heatedly chastised. The man took his broken arm and cracked it back into place and then flexed it a few times, satisfied that the limb was functioning. He then gave the heiress a look of total depravity. "And miss my chance to help bring back the Uchiha," the man responded as he licked his lips. Sayumi once again felt that shudder go down her spine. "You disgusting pig," she shot back, feeling utterly sickened by the man. "Oh, you'll be calling me something else when I get started with you," he said as he reached down and rubbed his crotch. Sayumi felt her anger and disgust reach their boiling points, and she was about to put this filthy swine down for good this time, but a loud scream of anguish drew her attention. She turned her head and what she saw made her heart drop into her stomach and caused her breath stop in her throat. Naruto was covered in cuts that were bleeding profusely and was pinned to the wall by the Chunin's sword. "No. Naruto." She was about to rush over and help him, but unfortunately the distraction left her wide open. The Chunin tackled her to the ground before laying on top of her while restraining her hands behind her back. He leaned forward and dragged his tongue along her earlobe, once again making the girl shudder, before he whispered in her ear. "Now this is a position I know you like. Get the fuck off me," she yelled as she struggled to get free. "Now why would I want to do that?" Besides, he used his free hand to grab her head and move it so that she was watching what was happening. It's the best seat in the house to watch the show. Sayumi could only watch on in horror as Hiruto was being tortured. They made deep, slow and deliberate cuts across his body. They took turns punching, kicking and stabbing him repeatedly. Tears welled up in her eyes as she watched Naruto struggle to stay conscious throughout the ordeal, but ultimately, he could not hang on any longer and his head slumped, having momentarily passed out from the pain. Her blood ran cold when she heard what the Chunin said next. It seems that he can't take much more. Let's finish him and go get paid already. The feeling of dread flooded her being as she watched Chunin 1 rip the tanto from the boy's body. He then lined up the blade with the blonde's neck before raising his hand. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down as the realization of what was about to happen sunk in. No, 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 no. I can't lose him too. I can't. Her hair slowly started to stick up, strand by strand. I already watched my entire family get killed. Lightning started crackle along her body. What the? Chunin 3 said in bewilderment. I refused to sit by and watch this time. Her hair stood up and her body was wrapped in a coat of lightning. It shocked her restrainer and threw his unconscious body off her. I refused to lose him. She took off with such speed that it kicked up a small hill of dirt behind her. She never noticed the aura around her hands and feet. Both Chunin were startled by the shout and quickly turned around to see the heiress quickly closing in on them. Chunin 2 tossed a few shuriken in hopes of stopping her. To his surprise the shuriken were deflected by the coat of lightning. When she was within range, he went to punch her face. Sayumi saw the punch coming toward her in slow motion. With absolute ease, she sidestepped his attack before countering with a palm strike to his chest. The man clutched his chest and reeled back in agony before he fell face first to the ground. Sayumi was given no time to rest as Chunin 1 started to attack her with his tanto blade. Once again she evaded the attacks with ease. She took advantage of an overextended upward slash and in that moment she pelted his chest with numerous punches. After landing the final one, she watched as he fell to his knees clutching his chest in pain. Without a second thought, she put him down with a spinning heel kick to the side of his head. Feeling the negative effects of her cloak she quickly cancelled it and caught her breath. It was then where she noticed the aura that was still present around her hands and feet. Is this her thought was cut short as she heard the weak and hoarse voice of her Ataudo. Sayumi. Naruto. She exclaimed and unconsciously cancelled the aura. She ran to him and had to choke back a sob when she took in his bloodied and beaten form. Oh Kami, oh Kami. Don't worry Naruto, you'll be okay, alright. She said as she tried to get her emotions under control. She gripped the handle of the sword and said, I'm sorry if this hurts. She then began to pull the blade out of him. But the state he was in, he couldn't even react to the feeling of blade being pulled out of him. With the limited vision he had, he took notice of Sayumi's eyes. In a hoarse voice, he managed to whisper. One-E. San, your eyes. Just keep quiet Naruto. Save your strength okay. With a few more pulls she managed to dislodge the blade from his body. As if on cue, his body fell forward and Sayumi had to drop the sword to catch him. She sat on the ground and cradled his head in her lap. She desperately tried to keep him conscious. Come on Naruto, stay with me. I can't lose you too, I won't lose you, so just try to stay awake, okay? Tears were now streaming down her face as her voice was close to cracking. Through a blurry visage, he looked up at her, One-E-chan. His breathing got weaker as his hand cupped her face. Don't worry about me, a small smile crossed the blonde's lips. I promised that I'd be there for you. A bout of coughing rushed from his lips, blood seeped out of the corners. So I'm not going anywhere. Another fit of coughing, blood flew from his lips. You got that? He questioned, some slight determination in his voice. His vision continuing to stare at the person above him, slowly blurring to nothingness. I'm not going his voice only now that of a whisper anywhere. With that last word his eyes closed before his hand fell from her face, his body going limp in the girl's arms. Naruto. She called but got no answer. Come on Naruto, this isn't funny. Once again she got no reply. Please don't leave, you promised you'd be there for me, so wake up, please wake up. She cried. She sat there holding his still body with her tears flowing from her crimson red eyes and raining down on the boy. Please don't go. She whispered. Naruto awoke with cold sweat running down his face. He was hyperventilating at what he just experienced. What just happened? He asked in a frantic manner as he tried to get a grip on his situation. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. After that he noticed the bandages that were wrapped around his torso, as well as his arms and legs. He reached up and felt another bandage wrapped around his head. So it wasn't a dream then? Definitely not. Welcome back to the land of the living, kid. Kurama spoke up. Kurama. Why do you keep asking as if someone else is in here? Kurama deadpanned. Very funny for a ball. Mind telling me what the hell happened? While Kurama was relaying what happened to Naruto, Hiruzen was doing the same in the room next door. Sayumi awoke in a similar fashion to Naruto and took notice of the company that she had. The Sande Ami greeted her before he sat down and explained what happened. He told her that it has been 3 days since the incident and that his Anbu had found her unconscious and cradling Naruto's body. "Oh Kami. Naruto. Is he okay? Is he alright?" She asked frantically before a hand to her shoulder stopped her concerned rant. "He is okay. Your assailants used a poison on him that severely affected his nervous system and amplified any pain he felt. While he was in critical condition, Unoa was working on him and he has since recovered and is resting in the room next door." She felt the pounding of her heart against her chest slowly subside and she let out a heavy sigh of relief. "Thank Kami. I don't know what I'd do if he didn't make it." She was about to speak again, but the Hokage gestured for her to stop. "There's no need for an explanation, Sayumi. I already know what happened. Though there is something that I wanted to ask you." "Ask away, Hokage-sama." The girl replied. "Very well. When my Anbu arrived on the scene and began to collect the bodies." "Pardon me, Hokage-sama." Sayumi interrupted, "But, bodies? As in dead ones?" She asked in an incredulous tone. "Yes, Sayumi-chan. 2 of the 3 assailants were killed during the confrontation. It is apparent that you are unaware of how they died, so I'll tell you. I am sorry that you've had to experience this so early on, but you were the one that killed them." Sayumi felt as if a sledgehammer slammed into her when she heard that. Her features morphed into that of disbelief. "No. That can't be. I killed them. I didn't even notice, I wasn't even trying to, I was only focused on getting to Naruto." She started to hyperventilate as visions of her actions started to flash through her mind. She covered her mouth as she felt her stomach heave. She quickly leaned over the bedside and emptied the contents of her stomach into the conveniently placed bedside pan. But the spare towel that was at the bedside, she wiped away the little bit of puke that was on her mouth. With one more deep breath, she managed to recompose herself. "Sorry that you had to see that, Hokage-sama. I completely understand, Sayumi-chan. To know that you have taken the life of another, be it in self-defense or otherwise, it is a heavy load to bear. Do forgive me for saying this, but it is actually a good thing that you have gotten past this already. You are training to become a kunoichi, which means that sooner or later, like all other kunoichi, you will have to kill. But as long as you find no pleasure in it and do it for the right reasons, then there is nothing to fear and be ashamed of, for you knew what you did was right," the old man wisely advised. She let the words of her elder sink in and they had the effect of calming her down a bit. But they didn't completely dispel the lingering unease she was feeling. "Now, as I was saying, when the bodies were discovered and checked for the cause of death, they had some strange injuries of which we concluded is what led to their demise. The first one died because the inside of his chest was superheated and practically fried to a crisp." Sayumi's eyes widened upon hearing that. "The other had multiple smaller wounds on his chest similar to the first one, but what did him in was that his brain was heated to the point where it exploded inside his skull." Even the Sandaime grimaced at the description. "Do you know how you did that?" Well. She wasn't sure how to answer at first, but after a few more seconds she recalled the aura that was surrounding her limbs. "I think it has to do with what Kurama-sensei's been teaching me." With a raised eyebrow and an intrigued expression, Hiruzen motioned for her to continue. "Since I learned the fire manipulation faster than anticipated, he decided to teach me another way to apply my Kaiten chakra. Heat style." "Heat style?" Hiruzen parroted. With a nod she continued. "He said that by focusing on only the heat aspect of my Kaiten chakra, I can separate and use it independently. I haven't been able to properly use it up until that night." "Interesting. I'll have to ask him about it later." "Well, that is a useful ability. But I'll have to stress for you to use it with caution. If those 2 chunin were any indication, then this heat style of yours is very dangerous to both friend and foe. Do you understand?" he finished. "Hi Hokage-sama. Is it okay if I go and see Naruto?" she asked. "Why certainly," he responded before accompanying the girl. "So you're saying that the reason she went that far was because of me?" Naruto asked. He tried to understand his furry tenant. "Well yes, but to be more specific, it was because of what you mean to her. You are one of the very few people she has left in this world, she holds you very close to her heart and given what happened to her family and clan, it stands to reason that she would do whatever it took so that she doesn't lose you." Kurama explained, a sentiment I know you would share if the roles were reversed. He added. Kurama had just finished explaining what had happened as well as given him the same talk Hiruzen did with Sayumi. Now Naruto wasn't naive, he knew that with being a shinobi, killing came with the territory. It wasn't something he liked, but he knew that it was unavoidable. He also learned of what Sayumi did and he knew that he couldn't fault, for if the roles were indeed reversed, he'd have done the same thing. He was soon broken out of his thoughts when the door to his room opened. Even though she learned that he was fine, even though she could now see that he was indeed okay, it still felt surreal to her. It wasn't too long ago where she was holding his limp, believed to be lifeless body in her arms, but to now see him alive and well, made her think it was just a dream. She slowly made her way to the side of his bed, never breaking eye contact. She stopped at his bedside before reaching up and touching his face. As her hand met his skin, visions of his bloody and limp body flashed through her mind. "Naruto, is it really you?" she asked as her eyes were slowly becoming misty. Naruto took her hand in his and smiled at her. "Yeah, it's me." Her dam broke as she jumped on the bed and tackled him in a hug. "I thought I lost you. When I saw your eyes close, I thought that you." Her words devolved into sobs as she cried into his chest and held him tighter. Naruto held on to her while running his hand up and down her back. He looked at the Hokage, who smiled at him before taking his leave, but not before ordering the hospital staff to not bother Naruto and Sayumi. I'm sorry for making you worry like that, Oni-san. If I was stronger, then you wouldn't have had to," he tried to say but was cut off. "Baka," she heatedly whispered, "don't apologize for something you had no control over." "But," I said, "don't. What happened wasn't your fault and I won't have you taking the blame for it," she says in a stern whisper. "Okay," he conceded. No more words were spoken as they laid and held each other, both of them taking comfort in the fact that the person they treasured the most was still safe. It was nighttime before any more words were said. "I don't want to go back to my room tonight. Is it okay if I stay with you?" Naruto chuckled at the innocent question. "You've pretty much already taken over the bed, what's the point in asking?" Sayumi playfully swatted his arm. "Well, excuse me for being polite," she said before making herself more comfortable. It wasn't long before they both fell asleep. The next day they were cleared to leave the hospital with orders not to do any strenuous activities for at least a week. So that meant no training. When they made it home, Naruto and Kurama informed Sayumi that her bloodline had awakened, but because of the rush of events she never noticed. She rushed to the nearest mirror to see for herself. Ecstatic would be an understatement for how she felt. She was through the roof for finally awakening her Sharingan, stating that at least something good came out of it all. But unfortunately, that's where her good mood ended. 2 weeks had passed since the attack and they had gone back to training. He didn't notice it at first, but after a little while Naruto realized that something was bothering Sayumi. She would become unusually quiet for extended periods of time with a distant and blank look in her eyes. Whenever he asked if she was okay, she would snap out of her trance-like state and quickly say that she was alright before acting normal again. This wouldn't have been much of an issue had it not been happening so often. She even zoned out a few times during spars where Kurama had to quickly step in, lest she gets hurt. There were even times when he'd wake up in the night and find her clinging to him as if her life depended on it. She would be trembling with cold sweat drenching her body. Whenever he tried to talk about it, she dodged the conversations by telling him not to worry. They were taking a break from training, and Sayumi was sitting atop the cliff overlooking the waterfall in the training field. She had that same faraway look in her eye when Naruto walked up and sat beside her. "Ryo, for you thoughts?" Naruto offered. "That depends. How much you offering?" she asked back. "As much as I need for you to tell me what's been bothering you." "I'm okay, Itato. Don't worry. You should know by now, Oni-chan, that you can't fool me." He then took one of her hands in his own. "I want to help you." He gently squeezed her hand, "So please. Tell me what's bothering you." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She started. You remember how my Sharingan awakened on the night of the attack, right?" Naruto nodded. "Well, one of the traits that the Sharingan grants me is perfect memory. Anything I look at with my Sharingan is forever burned into my memory." Her grip on his hand tightened and she started trembling. "My Sharingan awakened just as they were about to kill you." Naruto's eyes widened in realization upon hearing that. Sayumi's voice cracked as she fought back her sobs. "The moment you were about to be killed keeps replaying in my mind and I can't forget what happened to you when I held your bloodied and thought to be lifeless body in my arms. My Sharingan won't allow me to forget it." Tears streamed down her face. I'm afraid of losing you," she admitted as the tears dripped from her face. Naruto pulled her into a hug which Sayumi responded by wrapping her arms around him and resting her head over where his heart would be. "Don't be afraid, alright? Like I told you that night, I'm not going anywhere." She looked up at him with pleading eyes. "Promise me. Promise that I won't ever lose you. I nearly lost you once and I couldn't bear the thought of losing you for real. So promise me that whatever happens you will always come back to me." Naruto's response was, "It's a promise of a lifetime." "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she whispered. Some ways into the trees behind them, a figure dressed in a black cloak with red clouds on his forehead is a Konoha hit with a slash across it and in his eyes a 3-tomo could be seen. Before he disappeared in a flock of ravens, a small smile crossed his face as he silently gave his gratitude to the blonde youth. "Thank you, Naruto-san." Dusk had settled in the village of Konoha. Citizens of the village began marching their way home after a long day's work, while a few others shook the sleep away, beginning their night shift. For the proud shinobis of Konoha, the day didn't end unless their muscles ached and their chakra depleted from training. Nor did it begin with them doused in fatigue, for they were always alert. For the young shinobis, Naruto and Sayumi, these words rang true. On a training field the two squared off from each other. Naruto was now 15 years old and standing at 5'9". His blonde hair was slightly longer and now stopped just above his cerulean blue eyes, casting a shadow over them. His tanned and muscular body was now donned in a form-fitting white tank top, black training shorts that were now in tatters and drenched in his own sweat. His opponent Sayumi was now 16 years old and standing at 5'6". Her hair had gotten longer to where it fell just below her waist. To keep it from getting in the way, it was done up in a high ponytail with two thick bangs framing her face. Puberty had done its job with her, for her former B-cup bust was now a high cup, her hips got rounder, and her waist was narrower, giving her a very curvy figure. All this and more were hidden behind a black form-fitting crop top and black training pants that did a lot to accentuate her figure, but it was now littered with claw marks and drenched in sweat. Sweat glistened off their skin. Their breathing was heavy, and despite their battered forms, they both held a grin on their lips, ready for round 3. "You ready, One-chan?" Naruto asked, slipping back into his fighting stance. With a snort, Sayumi activated her Sharingan. "Bring it, Ataudo." As if on cue, both shot forward and engaged in a furious bout of taijutsu. Naruto struck at her face with a clawed hand, but Sayumi blocked it and retaliated with a knee to the stomach which pushed him back. They continued like this for 10 minutes, trading blows, but unable to get the upper hand over the other. Naruto fell into a handstand spin kick. Seeing her jump back to evade his attack, he pushed off the ground with impressive upper body strength before somersaulting into an axe kick aimed at her head. Deciding her head didn't need tenderizing, Sayumi backed up just in time to evade the blow. They fell back into rhythm. Kicks met with kicks. Punches met with punches. Roars matching in ferocity. With a swift kick to his chest, Sayumi put some much-needed distance between her and the blonde before she quickly went through hand seals. Heian. Bikaku no Jutsu, she placed 2 fingers to her lips, expelling a giant ball of fire. Riding himself mid-flight, Naruto managed to land in a crouch before skidding to a stop. He immediately had to rush through his own hand seals. Fuden. Uzumaki K's no Cabe. The wall of swirling wind sprang up in front of him just in time to stop Sayumi's fireball. The wind wall absorbed the flames, and with a thrust of his palm, he sent the now flaming wind wall barreling toward Sayumi. He then formed a seal and muttered, "Expand." The result was an explosion that shook the training ground. The surrounding vegetation disappeared into ashes and was replaced with a large smoking crater. Naruto kept his guard up, knowing that did little to his opponent. His instincts were proven correct when Sayumi rushed towards him, lightning crackling along her body. At least his previous attack did some damage to her, judging from her clothes having soot and burn marks. In the few seconds that it took Sayumi to get within striking distance, Naruto activated his K's no Yoroi to block Sayumi's initial strike. With a brief shock from her attack not having any effect, Naruto began his counterattack. The bout of taijutsu went on, with Sayumi's lightning charging her attacks and Naruto's wind armor powering his hits, as well as neutralizing the lightning's effects. Not only did Sayumi's lighting cloak power her hits with said element, it also made her attacks a lot faster and sharper. Add in the fact that her Sharingan was predicting his every attack, allowing her to counter him with near-perfect precision, and pretty soon Naruto found himself on the defensive. Using both hands, he blocked an overhead strike that unfortunately left the rest of his body exposed. He'd pay for this error with a chest-fracturing kick from Sayumi, launching him into the nearby lake. Coughing up a little blood, Naruto's body skipped across the water's surface like a pebble before he could right himself and channel chakra to his feet. A little dazed but still very much in the fight, his instincts screamed at him to block. Following them, he brought his arms up above his head in an X just in time to take the brunt of an axe kick from Sayumi. An idea came to him and he flashed her a beepy smirk. She raised an eyebrow, confused by the expression, until she received the answer a second later. Naruto ceased the flow of chakra from the soles of his feet, allowing himself to be kicked underwater. Sayumi stood atop the water's surface with her guard up. Feeling movements below, she backed up just in time to avoid Naruto erupting from the water with a dual uppercut. She took a few more steps backwards, seeing Naruto go for a flip kick that just managed to graze her chin. He landed on the water's surface with a playful pout. "Oh. I thought I had you that time." Naruto playfully whined. "Gonna have to do better than that, Ataudo," Sayumi mocked with a smug grin. Naruto's smirk returned, "Oh, but I did." As he said that, multiple splashes could be heard, and in a few seconds an entire army of Naruto clones burst from the lake, surrounding Sayumi. "This is where you give up, One-chan," they all chorused. Despite the heavy opposition, and Sayumi did mean heavy, she couldn't help but to grin. Her Ataudo loved to count his chickens before they hatched. She waved her finger as if she were scolding a child. "TSK, TSK, TSK, my baka Taudo. Please remember what you're all standing on," she said and pointed down. All the Narutos looked down to see the water rippling under their feet and then back to the lightning surrounding Sayumi. The color drained from their faces. Shit. Sayumi channeled her lightning through the water and in mere few seconds, the clone army was cut down by 90%, leaving only the original dazed. The few clones that managed to escape electrocution dashed towards her, intent on winning the spar. She focused her Kaiten chakra to the tips of her index fingers, then pointed them at them. Hit again. Rapid offense. Multiple condensed balls of heat discharged from the tips of her fingers, dispelling the clones with cold efficiency. Seeing that the original was coming out of his lightning-induced daze, she rushed over to him before he could get his bearings back and finished the spar with a straight kick to his chest, launching him off the lake and back on dry land. Naruto tumbled across the field before coming to a stop on his back. "Ooh, that hurt," he groaned. He slowly got up in a sitting position, wiping away the blood on his mouth. "Ugh, I nearly forgot how hard she can hit." His thought was cut short when he felt the cold steel of a kunai being pressed against his throat. "It's time for you to give up, Ataudo." She leaned in close to his ear and whispered, "I wouldn't want to hurt you any more than I already have." The whisper sent a shiver down his spine, and it wasn't an unpleasant one. Naruto, being as bold as he was, decided he wasn't gonna give up so easily, so he leaned forward and pressed his neck against the blade, drawing a trickle of blood. Sayumi saw this and silently panicked before quickly withdrawing her kunai. That was all Naruto needed, and in the next few seconds he swept Sayumi's feet from under her, landing her on her derriere before he had his own kunai at her throat. For a moment he had victorious grin on his face before he locked eyes with her. Time seemed to stand still, and the rest of the world slowly faded away as cerulean blue met onyx black, and in that moment it was just the two of them. Naruto's grip on his kunai was slowly slipping as his face slowly inched forward. Sayumi was so mesmerized by the look Naruto was giving her, she didn't realize that her face was slowly inching forward while her neck was pressing against the now trembling kunai. The kunai slipped from Naruto's grasp, his eyes closed, and his face was now mere inches away from hers. Sayumi closed her eyes, and her lips were just a mere millimeter away from his before. Clang. The sound of the kunai clattering on the ground instantly snapped the team brought the teens back to reality. They quickly realized the position they were in and like a scene out of a corny rom-com, they immediately separated and looked away from each other with matching blushes on their faces. Off to the side we find Kurama chuckling to himself, having watched the events that unfolded. It may be annoying to watch them dance around their feelings like that, but I can't deny how amusing it can be. He decided to spare them any further awkwardness by interrupting. Clearing his throat, he announced his presence. Ahem. If you two are done with the foreplay, the teens became even redder at his insinuation, then let's get going. I'd rather not stay here until nightfall. Why? Afraid of the dark, furball? Sayumi teased. Nonchalantly he answered with a simple no, a mischievous smirk then found home on his lips. But I do know what teens tend to get up to when left in the dark, he quipped while wiggling his eyebrow suggestively. Both teens were now sporting full-body blushes and looked ready to explode in embarrassment. Laughing to himself, Kurama decided to spare them the fate of dying of embarrassment and halted his teasing. Ushering Sayumi over to him, he placed a hand on her shoulder and in a few seconds all of her wounds disappeared, leaving her skin as flawless as it's always been. Now while most would believe that a bijuu's chakra was harmful to everyone outside of its container, that wasn't the complete truth. While it is dangerous in large amounts, in small quantities it is quite harmless and very useful for healing most minor wounds. After they gathered their belongings, then the party of three began their trek to their home. At the Hokage Tower we find Hiruzen at his desk finalizing team placements for the following day. Now for Team 7. Normally I'd pair the two top students with the dead last for this team, but I think a little change is required. Besides, those three are good for each other. Thinking about this, team brought Hiruzen back to the night of the attack and the events that unfolded afterward. Flashback. Hiruzen sat at his desk with an emotionless expression on his face. Just over 6 hours ago his Anbu had picked up on a spike of chakra and quickly followed it. What they found was the downed and bloodied form of Naruto Uzumaki being cradled by the unconscious Ayumi Uchiha, while the bodies of their assailants were littered around them. With absolutely no time to waste, two of them picked up the two teens and made a beeline to the hospital. The other Anbu stayed behind and gathered the bodies of the Chunin. That's when they discovered that one of them was still alive. Without a second thought the man was put into a prisoner scroll and was to be handed over to Ibiki for questioning. Now back in the present, Hiruzen was listening to the information Ibiki and Anko had managed to torture out of the surviving assailant. From what we have managed to get out of the man, it seems that the former members of the civilian council were not happy with your decision. They decided to exact revenge on you by targeting Naruto Uzumaki, figuring he was the main reason behind their dismissal. Hiruzen gave out no reaction to that news, but the occupants of the room could feel the room getting colder. Even the normally stoic and stone-faced Ibiki was starting sweat due to the tense atmosphere. Without a hint of emotion in his voice, Hiruzen ordered Ibiki to continue. "Hi, Hokage-sama." They hired the three Chunin to do the deed. Along with a sizable monetary payment, the three were offered the body of Naruto's caretaker sister figure Sayumi Uchiha to do with as they pleased. Stating that, and these are his exact words. "If the Uchiha Heiress is willing to spread her legs and be a whore for that demon, then she should have no problem doing the same for you three." Ibiki had to stop right there when wave after wave of a murderous kai started emanating off the aged leader. "Inu, Nico." Hiruzen ordered in a stone-cold tone. Not even a second later the two Anbu appeared kneeling before the Hokage. "You heard that report, correct?" he asked the two. "Hi, Hokage-sama," the two answered. "If you were to take a closer look at Inu's mask, you would see a violently spinning Manjikyu Sharingan through the left eye hole." "Your orders, Hokage-sama." Inu spoke with an edge in his voice. Hiruzen only had 2 words for them. "No. Mercy." "With pleasure." Inu spoke before the duo flickered out of the room. Ibiki, who was standing aside and watching, even though he didn't show it, he was honestly surprised at how bloodthirsty Inu sounded. The only other time he remembered Inu being even remotely this bloodthirsty was when he was first brought into Anbu. With the Anbu now gone, he turned to his leader. "Your orders for the captured assailant, Hokage-sama." An icy glare was his only response. "Understood." Ibiki said before he bowed and left the room. A few hours later in the council room. At the early hours of the morning, before the sun could grace the land with its warmth, if one were to look inside the council room at this time, they would find the council all present and accounted for. Both sides were feeling somewhat anxious at how abruptly and urgently they were summoned. Even the normally monotone expressions of the elders were mixed with a smidge of curiosity. All muttering came to a halt when the door to the room blasted open and a cold chill creeped in, putting everyone on edge. A sense of eeriness took over as the Hokage slowly made his way into the room. Hands behind his back with his head down, allowing the Hokage hat to cast a shadow over his face, while his footsteps echoed throughout the room. He did not look up, did not greet them, and not even so much as a sideways glance. He just silently walked through the room until he was standing in the center. Only then did he address them. "Good morning. I apologize for the early and rather abrupt nature of this meeting, but it could not be helped." Hiruzen spoke, his tone not betraying any emotion. Danzo spoke up, "Why have we been called here?" He stopped when he saw the dark look Hiruzen sent his way. "Hokage-sama. During the last 24 hours, 3 shinobi of this village attacked and nearly succeeded in killing Naruto Uzumaki. Most of the clan heads reacted with shock, while the Nara, Hyuga and Aburami clan heads remained stoic. The elders gave no reactions, while the civilians suspiciously went silent. Not only were they given monetary payment to do the deed, but they were also promised the body of Sayumi Uchiha to do with as they pleased. This served to piss off the clan heads, while the civilians were starting to fidget and sweat in their seats. Luckily both fought back and managed to defeat their assailants, but it was not without cost. Naruto, after being hit with a neurotoxin, suffered wounds that left him on the verge of death. He likely would have perished had Sayumi not come to his aid. Sayumi, while she didn't have any major physical injuries, suffered severe chakra exhaustion and minor nervous system damage. Both were found by my Anbu and are now recovering in the hospital. The clan heads all visibly relaxed at the news, while the civilians were sweating like pigs. "Hokage-sama, who was it that ordered the attack?" Shibi asked. "I am glad you asked," Hiruzen said before he took a storage scroll from his robes and unsealed its contents. Thud. 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 Hitting the floor with multiple thuds were the heads of the former civilian council. A thick metallic scent filled the room as fresh blood seeped out of the necks, showing that the kills were very recent. Shock, fear and horror were the expressions that were frozen on the faces. The civilians all went green in the face, while more than a few of them emptied their stomachs on the floor. The clan heads and elders all kept their composure, but they couldn't help but feel slightly surprised by the scene. "As you can see, the culprits have already been dealt with." Well, he then turned his gaze toward the civilians, who by this point were close to shitting themselves. Not all of them. The civilian all fell to their knees in capitulation. "Please Ame-sama, let us explain." One of them tried to speak before he was cut off by a wave of kai. "There is no need." The aged leader started in low icy tone. "I already know that every one of you sniveling rodents had a hand in the attack. Paying off the residents of that area to be conveniently absent when the attack took place." The civilians were now visibly trembling with fear as they knew the punishment for their actions. "Please spare us," one of them cried out. Another monstrous wave of kai flooded the room that made even the veteran clan heads and elders feel nervous. Spare you? He started in an incredulous tone. You went behind my back and paid my shinobi to execute and rape not one, but two of the most important persons in this village. And you expect me to spare you? By the end, his tone was cold enough to make Yuki no Kuni seem warm by comparison. Tears of fear streamed down their faces, and brown stains and wet spots were now visible on the civilians' clothing. Please. The Kai momentarily ceased before the Sandaimi's next word surprised everyone. As you wish. The clan heads were honestly taken aback by the response, for they fully expected a front row seat to a massacre. One by one the civilians slowly raised their heads. You'll spare us? One asked with uncertainty in his meek tone. Yes, I will. But don't take my lenience as a sign of weakness. I'm only sparing you because I'd rather not have to keep cycling through civilians, as if they are cannon fodder. The civilians wanted to breathe a sigh of relief, but the Sandaimi's Kai returned full force. But know this, I will no longer be tolerating your defiance nor your insubordination. One more slip, one more step out of line. He paused before turning to the severed heads. With no hesitation he blew a stream of fire at them, instantly burning them to ashes. He then returned his icy gaze to the civilians. Am I understood? Aye, Hokage-sama, came the chorused reply. Good. He then turned his attention to the rest of the council. That will be all. Do have yourselves a pleasant day. With that he walked out of the room. The civilians quickly shuffled out of the room afterward, all of them needing baths and a fresh change of clothes. As the clan heads were leaving the room, Tsume turned to her fellow leaders and asked, Suo, all of who agree to never piss of the old man, say a. Was the collective response. But the elders. The elders were all still seated, each going over the events of the meeting. It seems Hiruzen's will of fire has returned. He is no longer the weak old man that returned to seat after the Yondai mate passed. Kahara remarked. This could mean trouble for us if he does decide to look into us. We need to do something. Homura said. No, he won't. It doesn't matter the amount of confidence that old fool has gained. Even he's not stupid enough to meddle in my affairs. Danzo said with certainty in his voice. Flashback end. That was 2 years ago. Since then the vast majority of the village started to change their tune toward the young blonde. Whether it was out of genuine reconciliation for the wrong they've done or due to the fear that the Sandaimi created, they had started to treat the boy fairly, as if he were someone, and not just the Kewpie brat. There were a few die-hard haters, but they kept their prejudice to themselves and just treated him neutrally. Thinking back to those times made Hiruzen chuckle, things have really turned around for you my boy. Now then, on to the other teams. With that he continued his work. It was the next day at the Uchiha mansion, and the sound of running water could be heard. Warm water cascaded down the shower and came into contact with its cold surface, creating a mist. Through that mist a female figure could be seen washing her long, raven black hair. Her slender fingers combed through the thick tresses of her hair to get the shampoo out. She closed her eyes and held her head back to allow the water to wash out the rest. Turning off the water, she stepped out of the shower before wrapping a towel around her body and another around her hair. After that she left the bathroom and headed to her room. While getting dressed she couldn't help but think back to the last 3 years. She shuddered to think what she would have been like had Naruto not come into her life. I'd probably be an emo prick with a mountain-sized log up my ass. She chuckled at that thought. Finished with getting dressed, she left her room to get breakfast ready while wearing a white tank top and black shorts with the towel still wrapped around her hair. While preparing breakfast, she couldn't help but think over her relationship with Naruto and how much had changed since the attack. When she used to only share a bed with him every now and then, now it was practically every night. More than once the rhythm of his heartbeat had put her to sleep. More than once she had woken up with his strong arm secured around her, as if to protect her while asleep. More than once she had looked into his deep blue eyes and just couldn't break her gaze, and each time she had felt the ever-growing need to capture his lips with her own and to make her claim on him, to say that he belonged to her. But no matter how much she wanted to do that, she knew that she couldn't for 2 reasons. The first reason was more out of uncertainty and fear. Uncertainty because she wondered if he would even see her as more than just a sister. And fear, for if she leaves her heart bare to the blonde, it would ruin the relationship she cherished deeply. Even though she has spoken to someone about this and has gotten some very good advice, she still had that lingering fear. The second and most important reason was the Hyuga princess, Hinata. She knew that the girl held feelings for Naruto far longer than she had. It was obvious to anyone with half a brain that the girl was head over heels for the blonde. It wouldn't be right for her to take away the girl's first love, especially since they started hanging out a little over a year and a half ago. It was 2 months after the attack and they were making their way home from training. That was when they heard the sound of laughter followed by the sound of sobbing. Feeling curious they followed the sounds until they found the source. They found their classmate Hinata, surrounded by 3 bullies who were picking on her. They made quick work of the bullies and sent them running with their tails between their legs and brown spots on the seat of their pants. After that they helped the shy girl up before offering to walk her home. On the way, both her and Naruto tried to make small talk with Hinata, but the girl only answered with meek and stuttered replies. After parting ways, they decided that they would help the girl increase her self-confidence. So they made it a point to hang out with her and get her to open up. At one point she even joined them in training. Her train of thought came to a halt when Naruto walked in. He was now wearing a crimson-red hooded jacket that had a black Uzumaki swirl on the back. It was zipped up halfway, giving a view of his wide undershirt that did little to hide his muscular physique. On his hands were black fingerless gloves that had metal plates on the backhand, and on his left wrist was a silver locket bracelet. He was wearing black Anbu-styled pants with his kunai holster in place, and the ankles were taped. And displayed proudly on his forehead was his black Konoha hit I-8. "Morning, One-chan," Naruto greeted while taking a seat at the table. "Breakfast smells good." "It should. I made it," she answered, smugly taking pride in her culinary skills. Hoofing in and sitting at the table was Kurama in his usual attire. "Morning, Vixen. Do be a dear and pour me some coffee please," Kurama asked politely. "Sure thing, Aniki." After that they sat and ate their breakfast in comforting silence. After breakfast Sayumi excused herself to get dressed. As she was leaving, Naruto found himself watching her until she was out of his sight. "You know you should just tell her, right?" Kurama suggested. Naruto sighed before turning to face the redefined. I know. It's just. It's complicated," he admitted. Kurama took a sip of his coffee before sitting back and gesturing with his free hand for the blonde to explain. "Enlighten me." Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at his Aniki. "What are you now? A shrink? Would you rather I go digging for the answer myself?" Kurama bluntly asked, knowing full well that he could do just that if he wanted to. Naruto put up his hands in surrender. Okay, I'll talk. You don't have to go all Yamanaka on me." Kurama nodded and gestured for him to continue. Naruto put his hands on the tabletop and entwined his fingers before speaking. "Well, I do care fo." That was as far as he got before Kurama gestured for him to stop. Kurama sat his coffee on the table before gave Naruto a piercing stare. "Stop. Right. There. Say it," Kurama ordered while pointing a finger at the young man. "What do you mean?" "Say what?" Naruto asked. Kurama's stare intensified and he could see Naruto starting to fidget under his gaze. "You know exactly what I mean. Now be a man and say it." Naruto gulped at the seriousness in the beast's voice and decided to comply. "Okay." He released a long sigh before he continued. "Well, I do love her. I don't know if I should say anything," Naruto admitted. "See, was that so hard?" Kurama said before he sat forward with his elbows on the table and hands clasped in front of him. "Now tell me, why do you think that?" Naruto didn't answer straight away, keeping silent for a bit before he spoke. "I don't want to ruin what we already have. I don't want to make things awkward between us, or worse, make her uncomfortable around me because of the feelings I hold for her," Naruto confessed. "So you're a coward then? You're afraid that what you already have will be threatened or become awkward if she doesn't return your feelings, is that it?" Kurama challenged. "No, I'm no coward," Naruto shot back. His face then took on a forlorn expression and his tone softened. "It's just. You know what my life's been like. She's one of the few people that gave my life meaning. If I were to lose her." He paused, his eyes dropped and he ran a hand through his spiky blonde mane. "I don't know what I'd do." Kurama sat there sipping his coffee and soaking up the boy's words. He silently cursed himself for not realizing it earlier. Due to rougher parts of his childhood, the boy had learned to cling on to the few people that saw him for him. So the mere thought that his own feelings could remove his most precious person must terrify him. Naruto then continued. "Then there's Hinata to consider." Kurama's eyebrow arched as his lips formed a wry smile. "Oh, the princess." Naruto gave a small chuckle. "Yeah. You know how she feels about me, right?" Naruto asked. "Of course I do. Heck, everyone and their uncle knows about that," Kurama said as a matter of fact. "Yeah. Well, I kind of find myself liking her ever since we started hanging out about a year and a half ago," Naruto admitted with a bit of pink on his cheeks. The look of realization came over Kurama's face. "Oh, I see. Not only do you fear what may happen with the vixen, but you're caught between your feelings for her as well as those for the princess," the beast pointed out, his wry smile never leaving his face. "Yeah," was Naruto's only reply. "You do know that there's a way around this, right?" Kurama asked with a raised eyebrow as he took another sip of his coffee. "Yes, I know, but I'm not gonna use that simply to get my own personal harem. I'm not my godfather, you know," Naruto shot back. Yeah. Sheesh, no need to get pissy." Kurama took one more sip of the coffee before setting the now empty cup aside. "As for this situation, I don't think you should worry so much." He saw Naruto about to answer, but he held up his hand to stop him. Just give it time. As it stands, there's no need to rush to find a solution. So for now you should let things run their course, and sooner or later things will fall into place. Trust me, you'll lose less sleep and hair over this if you do. He finished with a chuckle. Naruto took a deep breath before giving his Iniki a smile. Okay, I'll try. Kurama nodded. Oh, and don't look now, but your vixen's about to enter the room. With that he poofed back to the seal. Walking into the room was Sayumi in her new attire. Her hair was done in its usual high ponytail with bangs at the side of her face. She was wearing a black sleeveless kimono blouse, holding it together was a thin navy blue obi that matched with her ankle-length pants. Underneath you could see her white chest bindings. On her wrists there were 2 Konoha Hitai-8 and on her feet she was wearing black open-toed strapped sandals with low heels. She finished her outfit with a silver chained necklace that had the Uchiha emblem proudly on display. Now Naruto will admit that Sayumi is naturally beautiful, there's no denying that fact. But her outfit made her look absolutely stunning. Damn. I can definitely see why the mutt keeps sniffing at her heels. By your expression I guess it's fine to say I did a good job picking my outfit. Sayumi said while blushing at how intently he was gazing at her. Naruto caught himself staring and replaced it with a warm smile. You look absolutely stunning. I'm probably gonna have to beat the mud off of you again. Sayumi chuckled at that, thanks. It's good to know that I have my strong Itato to protect me. She said as she walked past him. Now let's go, we don't want to be late for team placements. Naruto walked to the door and held it open for her, while gesturing for her to go first, please, after you. Such a gentleman. She commented as she walked past. With that they locked up and made their way to the academy. On the way both of them got friendly greetings from the passers-by. Ever since word got out about the attack and what the Sandaime did to those responsible, the villagers decided to be friendlier to the boy as a way to repent for their sins against him, as well as to appease the Hokage. Naruto took it all in stride and just went with it. He was a little apprehensive at first when people actually started to apologize to him, but he just accepted it and moved on. At least they were no longer abusing him. Walking into the academy for the last time they made their way to their classroom. Upon entering they realized that everyone else was there. In the front row sat Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka. Both of them used to pick on Naruto at any chance they got. Belittling him and making him feel bad just for being around them. Sayumi put an immediate stop to that with threats of hospitalization if they ever tried again, so after that they left him alone. It wasn't until after they heard about the attack did they make an effort to treat him better, and now both even held a little crush for him. Up the line we find Kiba and Yuzuka. He used to be one of Naruto's main tormentors back when they first started the academy. Always trying to make Naruto seem inferior to his superiority. This attitude only got worse when he saw how close Naruto and Sayumi had gotten. So being the hormonal egotistical mutt he was, he challenged Naruto to a fight with Sayumi being the prize. He got his ass thoroughly handed to him and was hospitalized for 3 days. After that he begrudgingly gained some respect for Naruto for beating him like that and now considered him his rival. Seated beside the mutt was Shino Aburami. While Shino wasn't an open person and preferred to stay silent most of the time, he did have respect for Naruto since he knew that Naruto was like him, a container. He also knew what Naruto life used to be like before he met Sayumi. His respect for the blonde only increased when he heard that Naruto had survived the attack on his life. Further up the line sat, well-slept, Shikamaru Nara. While he didn't hate Naruto, he didn't go out of his way to get to know the blonde either, stating that the task was too troublesome. He didn't even react when he saw how close Naruto and Sayumi were, only raising an eyebrow and muttering troublesome before going back to sleep. He had only tried to get to know Naruto after the attack, stating that it would be troublesome if he didn't at least try and get to know the guy. Beside him was Choji Akimichi. Choji was probably the only one who had openly tried to befriend the blonde before he met Sayumi, often challenging him to eating contests, seeing as Naruto was the only one who could out-eat him. He had given Naruto a thumbs up when he learned that Naruto would be under Sayumi's care. He had feared for his friend's life once he heard about the attack, he even dropped by the hospital a few times and left a few bags of his favorite chips for him and Sayumi. And finally at the back of the class was Hinata Hyuga, who was waiting on her friends. Her hair was slightly longer to where it reached just past her neck and it was done in an asymmetrical bob style. She was wearing a loose-fitting dark lavender hooded jacket with black cuffs that covered her mesh armor underneath. She was also wearing a black form-fitting pants, on her feet were black low-heeled sandals, and around her neck was her navy blue Konoha Hitai-8. "Morning," Hina-chan Naruto and Sayumi greeted. "Morning Sayumi and Naruto-kun," she replied with a tiny smile. Hinata moved over in the seat to allow Naruto and Sayumi to sit. As they sat Naruto wrapped an arm around Sayumi who just melted into the embrace. The girls in the class sighed dreamily at the scene. "That's so unfair. Ino muttered to Sakura. Why does she have to take the best guy in the class? The blonde then folded her arm in jealousy. I know, right? With her looks, she could have had pretty much any guy she wants. Why does it have to be him? Sakura replied, feeling equally as jealous. You do know that they are not actually together, right? Shino asked with a raised brow from his spot behind them. Both girls turned around and looked at the bug user. Oh come on Shino. Even someone like you should be able to see that they've pretty much staked a claim on each other. Ino remarked before taking a look at the duo. She then gestured for him to look. Like seriously, look at that and tell me that they don't look like a couple. Shino glanced around and saw Sayumi nuzzle herself further in Naruto's embrace with a content expression on her face. He looked at Naruto and saw an equally content expression on his face as well. The bug user then looked back at the blonde and pinkette. That I cannot deny, and I would not be surprised if they were to pursue a relationship in the near future. But I was only pointing out that currently, they are not together in that sense. Yeah, we know. Sakura replied with Ino nodding. I just can't help but feel jealous anytime I see them. Hiba, who was listening in, decided to add his 2 ryo to the conversation. To be fair, he did try to be friends with you two back when we were kids, and you guys always bullied him. So you can't really blame him for seeking out someone else. Both girls hung their head in shame as they recalled their past actions. They were both pretty mean to him for no reason other than they were following the crowd. Hey. Sakura piped up. Why are you defending him anyway? I thought you liked Sayumi. Oh believe me, I do. In fact I'm hoping that I get placed on a team with a babe like her or Hinata and not end up with a sidewalk like you. The dog Nin teased, earning himself a fist to the head courtesy of an irate Sakura. Mangy mutt. The girl muttered under her breath and folded her arms in embarrassment. It wasn't her fault she was a late bloomer. The brunette said as he rubbed his sore head. Anyway as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted. Sakura shot him a heated glare at that. Well I do like her, I know better than to trespass on another guy's turf. He then chuckled. I'm sure you remember what Naruto did to me when I challenged him to a fight with Sayumi as the prize. Both girls nodded. What you guys don't know is that when I was in the hospital, he visited me and apologized for beating me that badly. He said that he was only getting his point across that Sayumi was not a trophy to be fought over and that if need be, he'd put me in the hospital again should I forget. He chuckled again. I have to respect the guy for defending his girl like that. He then gave the girls a pointed look. Just don't let him know that I said that. Can't let him think that I respect him. The girls snickered at that last part. Oh don't worry, we won't. All chatter came to a halt as their now former sensei, Iruka Yamino, walked in. As he made his way to the front of the room the students took notice that he looked a little banged up with a few bandages here and there. Iruka-sensei, what happened to you? And where is Mizuki-sensei? Ino asked. Iruka sighed and decided to tell them. They're going into this line of work anyway. Might as well give them their reality check now. Mizuki decided to steal the forbidden scroll last night and flee the village. I managed to track him down and stop him, that's why I look like this. He is now being detained for his actions and is awaiting his punishment. Iruka's revelation was met with shocked reactions from his former students. But why would he do something like that? Sakura asked, really not liking the fact that someone who used to teach her was now a detained criminal. I can't answer that, for his reasons for his treachery were his own, and he didn't feel like telling me. But there is a lesson for you all to learn from this. He stopped and let his eyes glance over his students for a few seconds, satisfied that he had their attention he continued. I want you all to know that you are going into the world of shinobi. The lifestyle is not a forgiving one, and not everything will be as they appear. There will be allies, people who you may have grown up with and gotten attached to, who become enemies and betray you. Just as there will be enemies, the very people who you fought against, who can become your most trusted friend and ally. So I want you all to keep an open mind while you are out there, is that understood? Hi sensei. Came the chorused reply. Good. He took a document from his desk, now onto team placements. And then he began calling out the teams. Going through each one until he reached Team 7. Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki, Sayumi Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga. Your Jonin sensei is Kakashi Hatake. The members of Team 7 all shared a look with each other before smiling and nodding in acknowledgement. Team 8. Kiba and Yuzuka, Sakura Haruno and Shino Aburami. Your Jonin sensei is Kurana Yuhi. Two thuds could be heard as Kiba and Sakura's head hit their desk and dark clouds began to rain on them. Why me? Both of them muttered. Shino and Ino couldn't help but stifle their snickers. Karma's a bitch, ain't she mutt? Ino muttered to the dog Nin, who flipped her off in response. Team 9 is still in circulation, so moving on. Team 10. Choji Akimichi, Ino Yamanaka and Shikamaru Nara. Your Jonin sensei is Asuma Sarutobi. Shikamaru raised his hand. Yes, Shikamaru. Iruka acknowledged. Why does Team 7 need so much firepower? He asked. With a raised eyebrow, Iruka asked, what do you mean? What I mean is that Team 7 has Naruto the Rookie of the Year, Sayumi the Kunoichi of the Year as well as Hinata the second-rank Kunoichi. That seems a little unfair to have the top-ranked students all on the same team. Shikamaru pointed out. Hokage-sama is the one who created the teams, if you want to know why he made them this way, then you'll have to take your question to him. The scarred Chunin answered. Yeah, I won't do that. Too troublesome. The slacker answered before resting his head on the desk. Iruka chuckled at the slacker's attitude before asking, are there any other questions? When he got no response he continued. Good. Now that is all, I wish you all the best in your careers and good luck. And with that he walked out of the room. One by one the Jonin senseis came and collected their teams, pretty soon Team 7 was the only one still there. 1 hour passed. Nothing. 2 hours passed. Still nothing. It was nearing the 3-hour mark and all 3 Jenin were reaching the end of their ropes. Sayumi's eye was twitching violently, Naruto was drumming his fingers on the desk, but if you took a closer look, you could see the indentations his fingers left, a clear sign of his growing frustration. Both may have learnt of Kakashi's tardy tendencies from Kurama, but it didn't lessen how annoying it was to deal with. Even Hinata was losing her patience if the rapid tapping of her foot was any indication. During the time that they had been waiting, Hinata decided to take a trip down memory lane and funny enough, the memory she thought of was the one where she joined Naruto and Sayumi's training. Flashback. Hinata was in her favorite spot in all of Konoha. It was a little clearing that not many knew about which was hidden on the outskirts of Konoha's memorial. What made it Hinata's favorite spot were the numerous flowers that grew there, specifically the lavender anemone flower. She would usually come here whenever the stress her clan created became too much and she needed a place clear her mind. The only other people who knew about it were Naruto and Sayumi since she told them when they became friends. But alas, a place that helped to clear her mind was now helping her conceal her tears. She was seated in the center of the clearing with tear stains on her face as she silently sobbed. She could hear a familiar voice say, "Hey Sayumi, she's over here." She then heard the incoming footsteps. She looked up and through her teary visage, she could see the incoming figures of her only friends. "I told you we'd find her here," Sayumi responded. Naruto wasted no time in sitting beside her and embracing Hinata in a warm hug. In response Hinata leaned into the hug and buried her face in her chest and started sobbing again. Naruto for his part just held the girl and allowed her to get it all out, it would do her no good if she kept it in. Sayumi silently sat in front of the duo waiting patiently for Hinata to calm down. She knew that whatever happened must have been bad enough for her to come here. It took 15 more minutes for Hinata to finally calm down from crying. She slowly let go of Naruto before thanking him for holding her. "No problem Hina-chan. You can use me as a handkerchief anytime." Naruto responded with his goofy grin to lighten the mood. It worked since he got a giggle out of the girl. Yeah, that's all well and good Itato," she said waving the blonde off dismissively. She then turned her attention to Hinata. "Now Hinata, you mind telling us what happened to make you come out here?" Hinata fidgeted for a bit, feeling unsure if she should tell them what happened. She suddenly felt something grasp her hand, and upon looking, she saw that Sayumi had taken her hand in hers. "We only want to know so that we can help you, so please," she gave Hinata's hand a comforting squeeze. "Trust us," Sayumi said in soft tone. Hinata steadied her breathing before looking at Naruto who gave her a nod. In her soft voice she said, "Oh okay, I'll tell you." She then recounted how her father and the Hyuga elders had pitted her against her sister in a one-on-one fight. She further went on to explain how she had lost that fight because she didn't have it in her to hurt her little sister. Finally she told them how she was now deemed as weak by both her father and clan, along with how she had been disinherited as heiress in favor of her sister. She had ran from the compound in shame afterward and ended up here before breaking down. By the end of the explanation there were fresh tears streaming down her face. Sayumi pulled Hinata into a hug and allowed the girl to cry on her shoulder. "Hinata, listen to me, okay? Not wanting to fight your family doesn't make you weak, it just means that you care about them enough to not hurt them, even if they kinda deserve it." Muttering that last part more to herself. She broke the hug before planting her hands firmly on the girl's shoulders and looked Hinata square in the eyes. "You Hinata Hyuga are the kindest, gentlest and one of the strongest persons I know. Don't let your asshole father and those idiot elders tell you otherwise, you hear me?" Sayumi's words of encouragement coming out in a resolute tone. Hinata wiped away a few tears before speaking. "But I'm not strong, I'm still weak," she said with her head down, "like my father believes," she whispered. She felt another hand touch her shoulder, it was Naruto who had been silent since Sayumi started talking. "Listen to me Hina-chan," he started in a soft tone, "if your father believes that you're weak, then I say prove him wrong. Prove to him that you're not the weak girl he believes you are," he told her. But how? Hinata stuttered. By training, of course. Naruto answered. If your clan isn't gonna help you get stronger, then we'll be more than willing to help you, and I'm sure Kurama-sensei won't mind either. Naruto stated, with Sayumi agreeing. You'd really do that for me? Hinata asked. Of course we would. You're our friend Hina-chan, and I'm not gonna leave my friends hanging when I know I can help. Naruto stated, now with a smile on his face. Tears of happiness threatened to escape from Hinata's eyes, but she held them back, not wanting to shed any more tears on this day. Bowing her head slightly, she spoke up in a soft but grateful tone. Thank you. Flashback end. After that day, she joined them in their training with Kurama. Her father and clan had brushed her to the side, so she didn't have to worry about them finding out, since they didn't care enough to find out why she'd disappear for extended amounts of time. During her time training under Kurama, he had really worked her into the ground and wouldn't hesitate to point out her flaws, her main one being the very Jaiken she was learning. He told her that the Jaiken was more suited for those who could handle the stiff and rigid movements that the technique employs, and that her naturally flexible body wouldn't be able to cope with that style. So to fix this issue, he started to help her modify the Jaiken to suit her. It was tough and it took well over 3 months, but eventually they managed to modify it enough so that the movements were no longer stiff and rigid. Kurama had even dubbed the modified style as the Nagareru Ken, or flowing fist. Aside from her taijutsu, he had also introduced her to elemental manipulation. Since being a part of the Hyuga's main branch, it was mandatory for her to learn the basic chakra control exercises at a young age, so Kurama didn't have to worry about going over that. He just went straight to finding out her affinity, which was in fact water. Deciding to get off memory lane and back to the present, she looked to see what her teammates were doing. Sayumi was still seated now with her arms and legs crossed. Naruto, on the other hand, was gathering chalk dust from the erasers in the room. Naruto-kun, what are you doing? She asked with a raised eyebrow. This, Hina-chan, setting the small container down with the chalk dust, is a little surprise for our tardy-sensei. He answered with a grin. He went through a few hand seals before muttering, Hyuden. K's nose a jiki, and a small funnel-shaped vortex appeared in his palm, which sucked up all the chalk dust before the wind condensed and took the shape of a sphere. The knob to the class door turned and in stepped a man with gravity-defying silver hair and was using his hit I-8 as an eye patch. Yo. He tried to greet, only for a wind ball to explode in his face. He blinked a few times and took in his appearance. He was covered from head to toe in white chalk dust, kinda making him look like living snowman. He could hear the sound of giggles and stifled laughter coming from his team to be. Yeah, I probably deserved that. He deadpanned. That was for being late, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto stated, with the girls nodding in agreement. The now identified Kakashi rubbed the back of his head sheepishly while giving them an eye smile. Sorry about that, I kind of got lost on the road to life. Only you could get lost on a one-way road, sensei. Sayumi remarked. Kakashi gave a nonchalant shrug and told them, meet me on the roof. He said before flickering away. He appeared on the roof completely free of chalk dust and leaned against the railing. Not too long after, his students arrived using the same technique, though it seemed that Naruto brought Hinata with him rather than she did it herself. I shouldn't be surprised, given who trained them. The Cyclops thought to himself. Don't worry, Hina-chan, as soon as we got time we'll show you how to do the Shunshin. Naruto told her as they took a seat. Now that we're all here. He started, getting the Genin's attention. Why not start off with some introductions? Why don't you go first, sensei? Hinata asked. Pointing to himself, me? Getting a nod from her, he shrugged, okay. My name is Kakashi Hatake. My likes are none of your business, there is nothing in particular that I dislike, though certain challenges from a certain someone do come to mind. My dreams. He stared up at the sky, haven't really thought about it. Kakashi finished in a bored tone. His name is Kakashi Hatake, son of the famous Akumo Hatake, better known by the moniker, the White Fang. He wields the Uchiha's Taijutsu, which earned him the nicknames Kakashi of the Sharingan and Copy Ninja. Oh, and he's usually late for everything. He likes his Icha books, and he dislikes those who threatens to harm them. His dreams are to one day retire at old age with the world at peace and the entire Icha collection at his disposal. Naruto explained, earning a raised eyebrow from the Cyclops. In other words, he's a good ninja, but also a pervert. Sayumi told Hinata, who giggled in response. And how exactly do you know all that? Kakashi asked the blonde. Naruto waved his finger. A good ninja doesn't reveal his secrets. Also, you do realize that he didn't deny the pervert claim, right? Naruto asked the older shinobi, who just shrugged in response. Meh. It's not like I go out of my way to conceal that fact. Everyone's a pervert on some level, it's just how open you are about it. Kakashi answered in his same nonchalant tone. Now, since you're so knowledgeable about me, let's hear your intro. Naruto just shrugged and then started. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My likes are my One-chan, her cooking, Hina-chan, the Ichirakus, my Aniki, the old man in training. My dislikes are those who can't tell the difference between a kunai and the scroll it's sealed in, as well those who would destroy innocent lives for their own personal gain. My dreams are to help my One-chan with her dream and to protect those precious to me. I would also like to be Hokage, but it's more of a secondary goal. He finished. Kakashi nodded and motioned for Sayumi to start. You're up, Ravenhead. Aniki's nickname is better. She mentally commented. The name's Sayumi Uchiha. My likes include my Itato, Shikuda. She pinched said boy's cheek making him blush. Hina-chan here, my Aniki, both of them. And training to get stronger. My dislikes are idiots who fail to see the forest for the trees and assholes who do anything to cover their own asses. My dreams are to help my Itato with his dream, clear a certain someone's name, and maybe have a family one day. She was the only one who failed to see the blush that appeared on Naruto's face. Yuha. Well, it's your time, princess. Kakashi said motioning to Hinata. Hi sensei. My name is Hinata Hyuga. My like include Naruto-kun, Sayumi, cinnamon buns, my family, even if the feeling isn't mutual. I dislike those who look down on others simply because they're different and kidnappers. My dream is to unite my clan by removing the caged bird seal and have my own family. She said while stealing a side glance at Naruto. Not a single stutter. It seems training with these two really helped with her confidence. Also talk about a love triangle. Naruto likes Sayumi, Sayumi seems to like Naruto, but has competition with Hinata. Oh dear Kami help him. I am not envying the blonde at all. Well, not a bad first day. Meet me at training ground 7 tomorrow at 7 AM for your Jenin test. Feeling confused, Hinata asked, but sensei, we already passed our Jenin test. She pointed out. Oh that test was to find out who had the potential to become Jenin. In other words it was to weed out the weak. The Jonin explained. Oh, okay. The brunette responded. Kakashi nodded before addressing them again, remember, 7 AM sharp tomorrow morning. Oh, and as a bit of advice, I'd suggest not eating breakfast. Jan. With a two-finger salute he flickered away. The three Jenin just sat there for a few moments and noticed that it was nearing nighttime since the stars and moon were making an appearance. Naruto broke the silence. So One-chan, Ichiraku ramen tonight? Naruto asked giddily. Sure, I don't see why not. She responded before looking to Hinata, you wanna come with? He's like a ramen junkie and I have to get him his weekly fix. Sayumi mocked. Hey. I'm not that bad. Naruto argued. Sayumi snorted before responding, anymore. You used to eat that junk all the time until I limited you to once a week. Sayumi pointed out. Not having a comeback for that, Naruto just huffed and turned his head away pouting like a spoiled brat. Hinata giggled at their antics before agreeing to the offer. After that Naruto put a hand on Hinata's shoulder and then nodded to Sayumi, after that the trio flickered away. They appeared just outside their destination. As they were going in Naruto slapped a silencing seal on the side of the building, an act that Hinata did not miss. Hey there, old man. Heat up that stove because I am hungry for ramen. Naruto dramatically announced. The girls just shook their heads at the blonde's exuberance. Hey there Naruto my boy. Sayumi let you off your leash again, huh? Tucci joked. You know it. So how about you get started on my usual, come on old man, chop chop. Naruto playfully ordered. Is that Naruto I hear being an impatient brat again? A voice spoke up from the back. Walking into view was a brunette just a few years older than Naruto and the girls. Hey, Amni-chan. Naruto greeted as said girl leaned over the counter to hug her favorite knucklehead. You know it, so how about that order of mine? Breaking the hug, oh hush you, first I have to get the orders of your friends here. She chided before turning to Sayumi and Hinata, so girls, the usual? She asked them. Hinata nodded while Sayumi responded with, sure. But the orders in place the father-daughter disappeared into the back to get them ready. As the teen sat and waited Naruto decided that it was time for Hinata to learn his secret. So Hina-chan, there's actually something I've been meaning to tell you for a while now. Naruto started gaining the brunette's attention. He took a deep breath to compose himself. What I want to tell you is that he stopped mid-sentence as he was still debating with himself on whether or not he should tell her. He looked back at her and saw that she was waiting. Sorry Hina-chan, it's kind of hard to speak about. Does this have to do with Kurama-sensei being the QB as well as him being sealed inside you? Hinata simply asked. You knew? Sayumi and Naruto asked in astonishment. Hinata giggled at their reactions before answering. Yes. I found out about QB being sealed inside of you from Tucson, who accidentally let it slip one night after an apparently bad council meeting. I only learned about him being Kurama-sensei a month after I joined you. She explained. The poof was heard and Kurama was now seated on the empty stool. And how exactly did you learn that? Hinata was a little startled by the sudden appearance, but answered anyway. Well, I accidentally looked at you with my Byakugan one day during training and took note that your chakra was red and not blue like ours. I recalled what a few of my clan members said about bijuu chakra being red. It wasn't hard to put two and two together from what I already knew. I see. So do you think any less of him now that you know about me? Kurama simply asked, but you could hear the hidden intent in his tone. Hinata took note of their expressions before she gave her answer. Naruto seemed to be on edge, Sayumi seemed ready to jump to Naruto's defense should she give an unwanted answer, while Kurama seemed to be gauging her, given how intently he was looking at her. It makes no difference to me just because Naruto is your container. You are you, Naruto is Naruto. I've gotten to know both of you well enough to know that the treatment Naruto faced at the hands of this village, as well as the evil demonic being that the village depicts you as, is completely unjust. Naruto is my friend, hopefully more in the future, and you are my trusted mentor. Nothing is going to change that. Hinata finished with certainty coating her tone. Kurama, Sayumi and the Ichirakus who were listening all felt their respect for the lavender-eyed girl skyrocket after that. To accept the young man despite his terrible secret and to even go as far as to defend the beast itself, it made them glad that Hinata was now part of their lives. Naruto on the other hand had a slightly different reaction. While his respect for her did take a massive step up, his already growing feelings for the heiress also took a step up. A small smile crept its way onto the boy's face. If only his situation weren't so complicated, he could really see himself actually pursuing something more with her. If only. Sayumi had seen the smile that was now present on the boy's face and could tell what it meant. She felt conflicted. On one hand she should feel glad that he was starting to see Hinata that way, they were good for each other, but on the other hand, she could feel fear slowly creep its way into her heart. She knew that keeping her feelings buried was the right thing to do. So why am I afraid? Naruto reached over and engulfed Hinata in a hug that honestly caught her off guard. Hina-chan, you have no idea how much it means to hear you say that. Thank you. He told her in soft tone. Hinata could feel herself heating up rapidly at not only how close she was to her crush, but also how sincere he sounded when he said that. Doing her best to fight back her blush, she shakily returned the hug and stuttered out, "No problem, Naruto-kun." Kurama smirked to himself as he watched the scene. He spared a glance at Sayumi, and he could practically feel how conflicted she was. You better make up your mind soon, Vixen. Naruto broke the hug and gave Hinata a grateful nod, just as the Ichirakus came in with the orders. 20 dishes with his favorites for Naruto, Sayumi's chicken ramen, Hinata's miso ramen and a pork ramen for Kurama, since they already knew what his usual was. After finishing their meal and giving their thanks to the father-daughter duo, Sayumi paid the bill before they left the stand. Kurama poofed back to the seal, leaving the trio to walk to the Hyuga compound and drop off Hinata. Well, not a bad first day. See you tomorrow, Hina-chan. Naruto gave her a two-fingered salute before he turned to leave. Sayumi hung back a bit before giving Hinata her farewell. See you tomorrow, Hina-chan. She leaned in and then whispered to her, and good job. The implication was not lost on Hinata whose cheeks took on a pink hue, but nonetheless she nodded before giving Sayumi her farewell before going into the compound. Walking into the Uchiha mansion both kicked off their sandals before Naruto offered to prepare dinner. No thanks, Itato, I just ate remember, and unlike you I don't have a bottomless pit for a stomach. Just wash up and meet me in my room, okay? Sayumi told him. Yeah, okay, I'll be there. He answered before leaving to clean up. A few minutes later he was completely fresh and ready for bed. He was wearing a black pajama pants with horizontal orange stripes with no top since he'd just discarded anyway. He pushed the door to Sayumi's room open and he was greeted with a sight that he had seen many times before, but it still didn't fail to take his breath away. Sayumi's hair was let down to its full length and she was wearing a black translucent thigh-length nightgown with matching bra and panties underneath. With the only light in the room coming from the moon shining in through the window, it gave her already magnificent figure an ethereal glow. Truly breathtaking. You gonna stand there all night, Itato, or are you gonna get in bed? Sayumi asked. Naruto caught himself staring and rubbed the back of his head sheepishly before getting into bed and under the covers. Sayumi got under the covers with him and nuzzled her head on his chest. With a soft "Good night, Itato." Her breathing evened out before she fell asleep. Naruto smiled and stroked her silky hair for a few moments before responding, "Good night, Sayu-chan." And not too long after he followed her into a peaceful slumber. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.